Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday, July 5th, 2023 meeting of the Town of Richmond Select Board. I would like to make a public comment here at the beginning and just simply thank all the people who came together to put on the Town of Richmond July 4th celebrations. It would be a very, very lengthy list, and I wish I had time for it, but I just want to say I think it was a great day, a lot of fun, good fireworks, great parade. And my thanks to everybody who volunteered to make it happen. Are there any other public comments?
Jay, this is Bart, just to add on to that, and I said the same thing at the previous Water Sewer Commission. Also, thank you to the first responders who responded to a definite Bolton pothole dispute.
Indeed. Mary?
Thank you. Mary Hool. As it happens, some of the pockets are here. As a member of the gardening committee, the pockets donated a few flats of flowers for us to fill in the planters at the volunteers green and around the benches. Thank you very much. They look lovely and they've been well watered. So that was it for the gardening committee. And also thank you to the select board for the $200 we used to purchase soil so that we could elevate what was in there. It was a bit short. The parking at Volunteers Green went extremely well, and I couldn't be happier with the paving. It is so nice not to have to sweep all the stones so that the runners don't slip and fall when they come through. I have a question about the sign on the front lawn. Was that, I looked at the last select board meeting and I didn't see notes approving the 4x4 sign.
The Black Lives Matter. Yeah, we explicitly called it out 2 meetings back.
Okay, I apologize for that. I would ask that because it has been proven that there is a significant amount of corruption with Black Lives Matter, maybe we could change it to a Juneteenth celebration sign. And I think overall, it is my opinion, clearly, that might go over a little bit better. And since Juneteenth is recognized as a holiday now, as opposed to Black Lives Matter, and I'm not going to go into the other stuff of Black Lives Matter, but I would think it'd be more appropriate that we recognize it as Juneteenth. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has a public comment on something not relating to the agenda? Any?
Respectfully ask the update on the installation of the memorial plaque for the Edmonds Bridge in Jonesville.
So we've been in touch with our historical society about the best way to display that, because it's quite a large plaque and we're not sure exactly where to put that. So Pete and I have been emailing back and forth about showing them pictures of the bridge, where could it go, how's the best way to display that. So we don't have a solution just yet, but we are trying to work on that in the mix of everything.
Josh, did you ever see how it was originally displayed? It was beautiful.
I did not. You have a picture. I'd love to see it.
I don't have a
Or-
picture, but maybe John Cohn might have one.
Okay.
You don't have one, Chuck, do you? So it was a big cement slab and it was like
Angle.
angled, but it was like screwed in and it was outside of the bridge. It
Because
was
the bridge has no real abutment, right? There's,
right.
so yeah, let's talk offline. If you had some ideas, I'd love to,
Okay, and
if
I'll
there's a way
try to
to
dig up a picture if someone has one.
that, or even if we could sketch it out,
Okay,
try to figure it out.
thank you.
Good, thank you.
Could we try to make that happen before the end of the year?
We will try in the midst of a lot of projects, but yes.
Okay, any other public comments on anything that does not relate directly to an agenda item? Seeing none. Moving into additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda, we have a request from the people associated with item I on your agenda to move that up. I have no objection to putting that first. It relates to an access permit. Okay, are there any other proposed additions, deletions, or modifications? Okay, seeing none. We will then skip down to item I, which is again relates to an access permit for 700 Stage Road. This is for access to 3 lots off of Stage Road. The select board approved the road name of 3 Boys Road for this road December 2022. The application has been approved by road foreman Pete Gosselin, and the application is included in the packet. Does anybody from this parcel wish to speak to this? Okay, see,
That would be us, but I don't think there's.
you're good? Okay. Any questions from the select board? Can I have a motion? It is at the bottom of page 6.
Let's see page numbers.
If you're, well, it depends.
I move to approve access permit 20 23-03 for an access at 700 Stage Road.
This is David, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Jeff Ford, seconded by David Sander to approve access permit 2023-03 for an access at 700 Stage Road. Seeing no hands going up, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, aye. Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye.
That was quick.
Okay. Going back up to the top. Okay. Our next agenda item is consideration of entering an entry of appearance in the appeal of Hillview Heights LLC preliminary subdivision approval, possible executive session. Josh, would you like to speak to that?
So yeah, this is an appeal of the Hillview Heights preliminary subdivision approval and the appeal and some letters that came in during the DRB hearing are included in the packet for review. We can have an executive session with the attorney to provide more information to the select board on how to move forward with the appeal.
Okay. Does anybody want to make motions relating to executive session?
I move to find that premature general public knowledge of the town's position in the Hillview Heights preliminary subdivision approval litigation would place the town at a substantial disadvantage because public disclosure of the discussion would jeopardize the town's litigation strategy and would lead to the disclosure of privileged and confidential attorney-client communications.
Do we have a second?
This is Bard, I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion to move that premature general public knowledge of the town's position vis-a-vis Hillview Heights would place the town at a disadvantage, et cetera, et cetera. Please state your name and your vote.
Discussion before you go into the vote?
This is just moving to go into executive session.
Discussion before you go.
Let's go ahead and have the vote, please.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, aye. Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay. Are there relevant questions about the subject? You're welcome to go ahead and ask.
I apologize. Can you just be clear to the public that this is a DRB decision, that they've approved something and there's appellants appealing it, and what the role of the select board is, the select board trying to determine if they want to be an appellant as well? Or are they trying to determine if they're hiring the attorneys to support the DRB's decision? I just want to make it clear which role the select board is playing. Are they playing the role?
No, right now, actually, that's what we're going to go discuss.
Great, okay.
But this is, as Kara said, this is in relation to an appeal to a development review board decision to approve a preliminary subdivision plan for Hillview Heights. And the executive session would be to consider what, if anything, the select board chooses to do. Yeah.
Okay, great, that's great to know.
Mary?
I appreciate
Yes, I'll be brief. Thank you. Very cool. When the DRB reached a decision on a case that someone brought against me, the select board had no role in it because they said that they were a separate body from the DRB and they were not to intervene in DRB decisions. And I had to go to environmental court and it cost me around $1,000 for that. And that's private individual. That's not the town. So the separation between the DRB, which you all have sanctioned as the DRB to make their decisions, should be separate and distinct from the select board. Thank you.
Yeah, I believe that's part of that is why we need to go talk to our attorney to just get the facts straight. Hopefully this will be, I hope this will be relatively quick, but is there a motion to the second motion now?
I move to enter executive session under 1 VSA 313A, 1 E and F to discuss attorney-client confidential communications and the pending appeal of the Hillview Heights preliminary subdivision approval, inviting the town manager and the town attorney, David Rue, to join the executive session.
This is David, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Jeff Ford and a second from David Sander to move into executive session to discuss this matter and to invite the attorney, David Rue, and our town manager, Josh Arneson, to join the session. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Aye.
David, aye. Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye.
So let's see,
We will try to keep this.
Jay and
I need to find out too.
who else is, oh, you guys gonna sign out or are you gonna bring your?
I just
Signed out.
I'm leaving.
Okay, so I'm gonna only invite me and David, and then Jeff and Jay, you're gonna leave your computers here.
Yes.
And-
I've locked my computer.
Okay.
Jonathan, this is Mary. Did you find
All
out?
right, Josh, I'll see you.
Okay, never mind.
I can just, I'll mute this.
Okay, so to sum up, we have a motion from Bard Hill, seconded by David Sander, to authorize Stitzel, Page and Fletcher, PC, to enter an appearance on the town's behalf in the appeal of the Hillview Heights subdivision's preliminary subdivision approval. Sorry, Jeff.
So my understanding is that this gives us the opportunity to be at the table, period. We don't necessarily have to participate, but it's a placeholder that we're there to understand what's going on. Is that correct?
That's pretty much correct. Okay. Kara?
That the town as the select board has the ability to be at the table. What you're saying is we're going to pay for both a defensive attorney and an appellant attorney. Because if you're not there as the DRB and having your lawyer represent the DRB to uphold their decision, and you're coming in, that's why I was trying to make sure I understood. If you're coming in to have an appearance, it means that you have the ability to go either way. You're having a standing, you're trying to get a standing in this decision where you already have a standing as the DRB. So I just want to make sure we're going to pay for a lawyer for the DRB and we're going to pay for a lawyer for the select board.
Is the DRB even represented at this?
The DRB legally has to be.
I mean, did they,
No. Essentially,
this is a de novo hearing. And the court sits as the DRB.
I understand
Yeah.
that, but what happens is either your lawyer is going to uphold the DRB, is going to represent the DRB's decision, or you can come in and appeal your own DRB.
we're not appealing our own DRB.
We're not appealing our
We're
DRB.
basically monitoring the proceedings, and then the lawyer will give us updates if there's anything that we need to jump in for.
That's basically it.
Is that-
So you're paying one lawyer.
Right.
Right, to monitor on behalf of the select board, because really it's between the. Well, it's between the original applicant and the environmental court as they sit as the DRB to review it anew.
Mhm.
And then the lawyer will update the select board if there's a development that he feels that the select board needs to participate in.
And it's my understanding the select board is the only entity that's able to.
Right. We control litigation on behalf of the town.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I just, because you can be on both sides, and I just want to make sure you're on one side.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no further comment, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I. David, I.
Bard, aye.
And J.I. Okay, thank you. Our next item on the agenda is probably what brought many of you here tonight. We have quite a few things to discuss relating to the police chief and other policing matters. Before we jump into that, I just like to give people a quick update about yesterday. Yesterday, if you were present at the town green or in the parade or elsewhere around town, you will have noticed that we had several, I believe we had 5 Heinsberg town officers patrolling the green and driving Richmond police cars in the parade. And they were very helpful. They interacted with the crowd and answered questions. And I think they did a really good job of, providing the Richmond with police service. That was at our request. Anthony Cambridge, their chief, asked me how many officers did I want? What did I want them to be doing? And because we really believe in community policing, I asked them to be on the green talking with people. Lisa, go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but I also wanted to add, they were also covering Heinsberg at the same time.
That's right.
Parade. So
Right.
red twice.
And Heinsberg's misfortune was our fortune. If you had not heard, Heinsberg did not have a fireworks celebration last night because the truck with the fireworks in it drove onto the field and sank up to its axles in mud. The wrecker that came to pull it out sank up to its axles in mud.
Oh, no.
So we said to Anthony Cambridge, please pass the word on to your townspeople, come on over. And from the looks of the crowd, I think quite a few of them did.
We should have asked them to bring their fireworks.
Throw 'em over the fence.
Well, that's except they were on a truck that was, this deep in
Yeah.
mud.
Yeah,
Okay,
just let 'em right.
so I think that was a useful proof of concept that the two towns could cooperate. Now, the only reservation I have, and then I'm going to shut up and let Josh kind of walk us through the various points here on the agenda, is I don't want to surrender control, whatever the arrangement that we have with another town is, because at the end of the day, we're the ones elected to represent Richmond residents. And I don't feel entirely comfortable saying, here's a blank check, you guys just do whatever you want and let us know. I think there does need to be some control. And that's why, I have pushed to try to keep the hiring process open, to try to recruit a chief, to try to flesh out the department, but I'd also like a pony. And right now, I can wish all I like, but I don't have a chief waiting in the wings to step in. So the only realistic thing I think at this point is to continue with the contractual arrangement with Heinsberg and then continue to explore other options. And so that's kind of where we sit. Josh, if you want to take us through the rest of the items, or if any members of the select board want to jump in at this point. Or do you want to talk about the hiring process?
Well, why don't we let Josh speak and then we'll have
Okay.
comments on what Josh described about the hiring process as the hiring manager for that.
So, as everyone knows, we had one candidate who we put forward, and then that candidate, and this is the hiring committee. That candidate withdrew from the process, so then I went back to the hiring committee to discuss how should we move forward from that point forward. Hiring committee did want to try to reach out to the candidate who withdrew to see if they would reconsider jumping back into the process. The candidate did not want to re-enter the process. At that point, the hiring committee also discussed if that happened, go to a plan B, which would be to reach out to the other candidate who we offered to be one of the final two candidates in the process to see if they would like to enter. They also essentially declined to re-enter the process for becoming one of the final candidates. So then I reached out at the advice of the hiring committee to the two candidates to whom we offered a first interview, but they declined a first interview. Noting that we'd increased wages for police officers and there had been some changes to see if, now a few months later, would they either be interested in entering into the process. After some consideration, both of them gave a few days to think about it, talk with their families. Neither one of them wanted to move forward in the process, even with increased wages for the police department. Some of the reasons it includes, they're concerned about maybe there's going to be a possible merger with Heinsberg. What would that do to their position here as chief? They were concerned about support in general for a police department in Richmond. They kind of have been following the last 5 years as far as discussions in the community and where is the police department going to go in Richmond. And also the compensation level for the police chief. So those are a couple of their concerns as far as why they did not want to re-enter the process. So that now leaves us at a spot where I think we've really exhausted the candidates that we had from the police chief process. Again, noting we had about 20 applicants, I'd say 15, 16 of those were quote unquote real applicants. Some of them were clearly unqualified, but there was about 15 or so that were really worth consideration. And now we've kind of gone through that list. And so I think the choices now for hiring a police chief would be, do we wait a couple months, go back out, try to look for another pool of candidates, or do we look for an interim solution, maybe an interim director of police services with the clear idea that it could be, 6 months, a year to help us through a transitional phase? Or do we do something else? Do we look to contract with Heinsberg or other ideas that the select board or anybody else may have to move forward? So kind of what I'm looking right now is guidance from the board as far as where would you like to go with next steps, knowing where we've been and where we are right now.
So one other relevant fact, I think, Jay, is the Heinsberg, town of Heinsberg was doing a public safety study. And they put a halt on our conversations about a joint police department. What month was it?
It was about December.
December, so roughly 7 months ago. And what I understand is they expect to be completed by the end of the summer, August, September. So that's still kind of a hiatus about, and the point of that was to do like a municipal district where you actually have a joint ownership. I know people have asked questions about let's have the state police do it. Another relevant factoid is we met with the Williston State Police leadership 10 days ago.
Okay.
They were pretty clear, they're understaffed. They actually were kind of hoping that we wouldn't even use them for dispatch. Because Heinsberg does not use the state police, Heinsberg uses Shelburne. Which illustrates the complexity and nuances of regionalization, that there isn't even a single entity doing dispatch across Chittenden County, right? So it also illustrated what they described for both dispatch and troopers is that they're working overtime, they have vacant positions, they are not interested in contracting with the town for more coverage. That said, they will do their best to cover things, but they said there are times it will take them even under urgent and emergent circumstances, an hour or two to show up. And that they are not able and willing to show up for sort of basic crimes, other things. And they strongly encourage towns to have their own police department for whatever that's worth. And so it's an awkward moment where we essentially have a shadow police department that exists in the budget. We have positions, we have revenue. We're contracting with the town of Heinsberg for some police duties. And by extension, sort of some chief duties, but it's not really clear, in my opinion, in current contract. So that is something we could discuss. When you think about the step forward, do we go out and recruit again? Do we hire an interim chief, which we've done before? Or do we do something else?
I'm looking at the rest of the select board at this point. David, thoughts?
I think that need to resume the search for a new chief.
I suspect they can't hear you.
I think we need to resume the search for a new chief.
Well, it's my understanding that Heinsberg is interested in working with us in some fashion. That a challenge for them is they have staffing issues of their own. And it's having a month-to-month contract doesn't help them a great deal, you know. And yeah, and they have budget issues on hiring more people. So what would give them some comfort and stability, as I understand it, would be a little bit longer term contract, maybe 6 months or a year. And that would allow them, like the guy, I think it's the guy who was the lead off for the parade. The black guy,
Officer
Andrew,
Thomas.
walked around Volunteers Green. I think they would like to hire him as an officer, but they don't have the budget to do that. And if we
Right.
contracted, that would give them some stability so that they could hire an extra officer themselves.
That's true also regarding Officer Nick.
Mhm.
He's part-time with the sheriff's department, part-time with Heinsberg. He'd like to be full-time.
So, it seems like I think contracting with Heinsberg is not just, yes, it's a discussion about what we contract for. And I think that would involve, at least a couple of us, a couple of the.
Right, to put back together the committee that some months ago when we had a meeting with our select board and their select board, all 10 of us here at the table. And we left the room thinking we had an agreement. We appointed a committee. We had the basis for an agreement. We appointed a committee made up of 2 of our select board, 2 of their select board. And then in very short order, the town of Heinsberg said, let's do this study before we jump in with both feet on this union district thing. And so that's why it never went anywhere. So essentially what Jeff is saying is, let's get the gang back together.
Yeah, I think so. And I would frankly, I would prefer that. I would prefer to have a more robust community conversation about, what community policing means to us in our community. We think we know, we think we know what it is, but do we really? Because that would have to be part of the contract negotiations with Heinsberg anyway. What do we want them to do? Like walk around Volunteers Green was a really good thing. That's a very specific thing to do. Get out of your car.
Lisa, before we jump, you haven't had a chance to weigh in. We're hearing everybody. So
Yeah,
what do you
I
think?
want to say a couple of things. First of all, I was really raging almost against the search process. I didn't like the way it was being managed. I didn't like the results. And somebody took the time to write to me, somebody knowledgeable took the time to write to me and explain pretty much every one of the steps and the considerations that went into them and so forth. Changed my opinion. I still don't think it's giving us what we want, but I don't think it's the process's fault. It's a larger question. And I've made that before. And that person was you, Jay. So thank you.
I mentioned this in front court forum. Sorry, I'm realizing how tired I am after yesterday. 37,000 steps.
But
The,
not done.
you're not quite done.
No, I wanted to thank you, get that out of the way. So, as far as Heinsberg helping us provide police coverage or providing police coverage for us, we've got a real world example of how that will work. We've been living it for however long it's been going on. If there are any questions about reliability, trustworthiness, skill, I hope they've been answered. If not, they probably will be the next month or two. So I really think it's a good idea
Right.
for us. I agree with Jeff. It is a good idea for us to continue it and to look farther at what that might mean also.
I apologize for trying to cut you off.
No, that's all right. I want to.
I wanted to share one thing that I mentioned on Front Porch Forum a couple, 3 weeks ago. The problems Richmond is facing are problems everybody is facing. The state police have 1/3 of their patrol positions open. That's the state police. That's why they're telling us, please don't call. And across the US, most small rural departments and a lot of other large departments are really hurting. COVID and the change in police culture after the death of George Floyd, your local restaurant can't hire servers because a lot of people took the opportunity to say, is this really what I want to do? And a lot of officers said, nope. And it takes a long while for that to change and to get people out of the academy. Our academy here in Vermont is a residential academy. It takes months. They don't offer childcare. So if you are a mom, it's very difficult to take part. The pipeline is just dry. And that's kind of why we're in this position. People ask, how would a regional police department work? That would be for us to discuss. But I just want to say, we would be the first regional police department in Vermont, but we would be far from the first regional police department in the country. If you are really bored, you can go and look over Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, the model more than not is a regional department. Pocono Mountain Regional Police Department, tying together a whole series of towns. I could keep on going, but it works very well for them. They realize that economies of scale and the fact that we're all trying to fill the same positions, it makes sense to work together. And so I would very much like to, as Jeff said, get an arrangement that will get us through the end of the study. And I grant you that it would be easier for the town of Heinsberg to budget if they knew that it wasn't going to be a month-to-month thing. But I'd like to get the gang back together and see if we can get the discussion moving now.
So to try to close my comments, I think it would make sense for us to re-engage with them about what would an extended contract look like. And I think they mentioned verbally to me a year, where in terms of staff stability, looking at a year at least makes sense. And I think we should do that to continue and make the contracted services more stable. It does not solve the question of what about the chief or police leadership, because right now what we're doing is we're renting police from a separate department. And there's some evidence, like the state police, when they've done this with some towns, when they get short, they get to a point where they say, we can't renew this contract. So that's eyes open, one of the risks if they get to that point. And I think also illustrates why there's merit to talking about what a joint police department would look like, where there's dual ownership. And right now it's sort of friendly negotiations between Josh and the folks in Heinsberg, but a lot of it's not really covered by the contract in terms of police chief services and management, which has kind of been the unresolved big picture. I think we need to call the question, though, in the near term, what about the chief position here? Do we just put it on the shelf? Do we start recruitment again? Do we look for an interim person? And I'll be clear, when we talked about this, however many months ago now, we talked about hiring a person that would help lead the community engagement, stakeholder engagement, and what do we want out of our police department. June Heston herself was particularly eloquent on this, that you want a chief executive of that department who helps engage in that. It might illustrate why we didn't find one. I'm not sure the issue is like our process, or maybe we're just using the wrong bait for fishing that. You know, if there's no fish that are after that bait, I'm not sure that throwing more bait in the same pool is gonna help. That said, if we, you know, I think it's either we negotiate something and then have conversations with Heinsberg, like the end of December thereafter, about what is, you know, what are our mutual interests, and is there a partnership to be had? But that's also going to be a medium to long term. In the meantime, what do we want to do about police executives or chief? Do we contract with them for it? And then under that contract, in my opinion, that contracted person is supervised by our town manager, not their town manager, because that's a difference between they are working for us or they're working under a contract. So I think that's the kind of feature that comes up. Or do we want to hire somebody in the interim who may or may not be a chief to help lead that? I think that's what's on the table. What do we do about the chief position? Do you go back out and fish again? Do you put the fishing rod away for a while? Or do we look at a different model for the interim?
I like your term, Bard, seasoning. It seems to me that we have an opportunity here, you know, just any police officer or any police chief, to my mind, is not good enough. You know, there was a really good article in the New York Times this weekend about a small town in Minnesota, outside of Minneapolis. And it's a peaceful little town, I think 22,000 people. And they went through some turmoil in their police department, hired a couple of black officers, including a woman, and half their police department quit. And the chief, who was one of those hires, said, maybe that's okay. You know, if they didn't want to serve with me, then maybe they're not the kind of police that we want to have in town. And they were in no hurry to re-up until they found the right people. In that circumstance, there wasn't a sense of urgency. There's not a lot of crime in this town, in that town. And they're looking for the right fit rather than any fit.
Right.
And I think that we are in that position. You know, there was a different time after George Floyd's murder that you know, that shook up a lot of police departments all over the country. We've certainly seen it here. We saw it in Burlington, and they still haven't recovered. But I haven't seen a huge crime spike, you know, in Richmond. Burlington, I can't say.
Excessive speeding.
But except for speeding, you know. And so I think that this is a really good opportunity for us to take a pause and have a conversation with the community about what it is we want, how we go about doing it. And in the meantime, I think we can get most of our needs met through the Heinsberg contract if we structure it well, and if we have oversight from here.
Right. And that's the key thing. We need to have some oversight, because we know from, I mean, some of the, we hear a lot about what kind of department do we want. And the thing is, over the last 3 or 4 years, we've heard certain things come forward loud and clear. A very strong commitment to fair and impartial policing, a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, community policing. We don't want the fat Southern sheriff saying, oh, you're in a big heap of trouble now, boy. We don't need that. One of the things we're looking for from the last hiring process, the last search process, was somebody who would help, as has been mentioned, help the town through strategic planning. I mean, we're looking for somebody who has experience. A couple of the candidates that didn't work out actually would have been real assets in that area. Unfortunately, we'll never know. I know a lot of you are here tonight to share your thoughts, and I'm going to go first to the guy who's got his hand up on the screen, because I think his comments might be relevant. Anthony, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So I guess I just want to start off by saying, you guys have been great with us, doing the contract, especially Josh, really just, helpful, and, it's really been enjoyable working with everybody. What I wanted to say was, we are, as far as I know, we're the only department that, at least in the area, that our problem is budgetary. I have the applicants, as you guys had seen, just two of them, which is Nick and Andrew. If we had the budget to hire people, we would be able to fill even more than we're currently at, which is 6 full-time. That 6th position isn't going to last long because of budgetary concerns. So as far as last month, we've been covering Richmond with our 6 officers from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Saturday and Sunday. So 7 days a week. And we've now, as of July 5th, increased our hours. So as of right now, Richmond is being covered by the town of Heinsberg, or by my department, 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. All week long. The reason I'm saying this is because the way the contract was initially set up, and I think it's a great contract, and it's exactly what we wanted from Richmond and Heinsberg. But when it was initially set up, we did have Allison and Ben, and it was essentially set up for us to help out. But what's happening now is, and I'm not complaining about it, I absolutely love to help whatever way I can. But if we're going to keep helping with as many hours as we are, and this is a conversation that I think I've had with Josh as well, we are going to need more help in some way, as far as someone hiring somebody, whether it's Heinsberg or Richmond. We're definitely going to need more people if we're going to continue what we're doing.
And Anthony, I think that's a perfectly reasonable point. You're not, if you own a business, you don't expand your capacity and build big new plans if you don't have staff to make those come true. Or
Just one other brief reminder that our police department is ostensibly represented in collective bargaining by a union. Unions are not notoriously fond of contracting out positions to non-union organizations. And I'll just point out that that there is some communication and negotiation with the union that's merited in anything we do, because we do have a collective bargaining agreement.
okay, people here in the room. Go ahead, Patty. Could you come up?
Sure. I have many questions, but I'll only ask one. And what's that? Oh, I'm Patty Breshett. And from Richmond. And I would just like to try, we've got Anthony on the line, so I would like to try out this idea of sometimes you have governments that are split governments, right? Like we've seen this in many countries. And they share the power every other year. It switches, as a possibility. And what I would throw out here is that if we had, I'm hearing that the Heinsberg police are fully subscribed and actually have more people. They're very unusual, from what you're all talking about. From what I've heard from different community people, and maybe Josh, you can speak to this, it would have been one of my questions, my sly way of getting another question in, is that I'm hearing really positive things about the Heinsberg police and what they're doing here. So I would propose to you that in the interim, that potentially we do a year-long engagement. Let's date for a year. Let's have the chief, whether it's Anthony or if Anthony, the chief of the Heinsberg police be a shared position. a shared position between Heinsberg and Richmond. And therefore, that position could be an administrator for us and start slowly hiring excellent people onto the Richmond police force with Richmond uniforms and Richmond badges and so forth. And instead of the need to make Heinsberg have 8 people, maybe Heinsberg gets to keep their 6 and we start hiring here. And maybe in the end, we'll only need 4 each. I don't know. I mean, I would love for you guys to study the economic and financial impact of having one chief shared financially
Mhm.
and potentially fewer officers. I'm hearing that if there were 8 officers between the 2 towns, we might be able to get some pretty good coverage. That's quite a savings.
Mhm.
And, you know, in all areas, you know, I think Anthony has been the chief, I'm not sure how long, but I think it's been 6 or 7 years or more. And it's obvious, you know, it's clear he's mentoring officers to be officers to do community policing. We have an opportunity here. We don't have a police department. That's an opportunity, not a tragedy or an urgency. It is, I mean, I'm sorry we lost our, you know, but here we are. And we have the opportunity to create something brand new. One, a joint police force where we have this artificial line of Heinsberg and Richmond. Our towns are so similar. We could save money and we could have a progressive police department. I don't want just any police department. I want a progressive police department. I want a new century police department that's post George Floyd. And so I think we have an opportunity right now to create a terrific police force. It's very obvious to me that Richmond wants a police force.
Mhm.
And I'd love to see us starting to hire good police officers for Richmond.
Mhm.
So that would be what I would say.
Okay, yeah, Bonnie, or Evelyn, you both had your hands up, but you were first up. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Evelyn Haberman Killian. I have lived in Richmond for 30 years. I have recently moved 3 miles over the line in Jericho, so I'm speaking
Later.
to what's that? Yeah, right, exactly. So I am not a resident of Richmond, but I care deeply. And I'm really excited and I've really been involved with the policing here in Richmond discussions. I totally appreciate, first of all, the clarification of where we are. And Anthony, thank you so much for being here and all the work that you're doing. I was at the fireworks yesterday and saw the police or the whole day, and it was wonderful to have them. I think, and I agree with Patty of the opportunity we have here that is wonderful. I want to just touch on what Jeff was saying, that if one of the reasons that a police officer is hesitant or a chief is hesitant to be hired here is because they don't understand what we really want. I think that there are, I know of a number of community members that would be very interested in setting up a community forum that we can get input from everyone, and that we could make a real definition of what we want for our police department, how we want that how we want to have a police department, a community police department, so that we can use that as a benefit to hiring, that people would actually know this is what Richmond wants, and the people that that speaks to would be the ones that actually then come and interview with us, and we can be proud of that. We can actually make that a forte for us, that they actually understand what we want and that the community supports them. Because I hear that people are saying that they don't understand if the community is actually supportive of the police department. And we don't want that message. But giving them a clear definition of what it is that Richmond wants would be very beneficial. So, thank you very much for your.
Jane, I think if I could, I think there's a follow-up question to Anthony. If you would describe maybe in a minute, the Heinsberg Public Safety study scope and duration. If you're still there, Anthony.
He's there at the top center. There he is.
Sorry. So they're a little bit behind. I would expect that it would be done in about a month and a half, and it does include the Heinsberg Fire Department. And meeting with them, one of the things they laid out, because things are changing, numbers are changing because of our interaction with Richmond. And from my meetings with them, they said, no matter what, make sure you don't lose any opportunity that you have with Richmond waiting for this study to be done in any way. And that was something that they also told our administration in town, is that the future of policing is small towns working together, whatever that may look like. But they said, do not let this study hold you up for whatever that's worth. That's what I was told.
And Anthony, if you could expand to say your contractor and the contract cost, if you know what those are.
I don't, it's around $90,000 or so. I don't know the exact number.
And an independent contractor is essentially talking to people and producing a report, to sort of the discussion that we just started to have about how do you frame that. That's one example from Heinsberg.
Yeah, they've reached out, they've done a survey to the people in town that are open to people that live and work in Heinsberg. And they've had community meetings around town, various ones. I think there was about 6 that I had heard of. And then they met with all of the people that work in town and the various different groups in town, including, fire department, police department, library, things like that.
Thank you.
Okay. Denise,
Mr. Chair, could you give some history?
could you?
I'm sorry. And it's going by. Denise Barnard. Can you explain, we first started contracting with Heinsberg, and then we heard that the union had gotten involved and it was backed off, but then we're here again. Can you explain what happened, number one? And can you also explain the financial liability that we share with Heinsberg now? Are we giving them an hourly rate? Do we have a set rate?
Okay, so you go ahead.
So the union's main concern was that, it's essentially union work that we were contracting Heinsberg to do. So they wanted to make sure that their officers were being treated fairly and given first right of refusal for those shifts. So we reached an agreement with the union, which included essentially right of first refusal for any overtime shifts, as well as increasing wages in general in the contract. So that, I think, is a fairly quick summary of where the union was, where we got to with them. The agreement with Heinsberg is for $50 per hour for coverage. So that's when they're not necessarily having somebody here in town, but if there's a call out for service from Richmond, they will respond rather than going to the state police. And then it's $70 per hour for patrol coverage. And that's when they actually have an officer here in town. And it was primarily set up for traffic control, traffic patrol for speeding and parking enforcement.
Okay. And roughly as of June 30, approximately what has the town of Richmond spent to Heinsberg?
We have an invoice in this one. I think it's for $12,000 or $13,000. Is it 14? Yeah. So that's for the full month of June. So I think that's about what we can expect per month going forward.
Like 14,000.
Around there, probably. And as Chief Cambridge noted, we'll probably be increasing some hours because essentially, when they are staffed, we might as well be covered. And really, when you look at that compared to payroll, I think I haven't done an exact study on that, but we're paying less than we would be for employee officers for that time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ann Nauman.
You do still have.
I know, but Ann said her hand up
Yes,
for one.
thank you. I just want to ask a clarification from Chief Cambridge. I think I heard you say that you've gone through a process and that your community is supportive of working with Richmond, because that's my question is, if I was a citizen of Heinsberg, I might not think it was a great idea that half of my police force was going to Richmond. So is that what I heard you say, that generally there is support in the community for doing this?
There's definitely support in the community, and I think Heinsberg has come to I guess a conclusion that they want good policing at a good price. And if we can provide that by our situation is we don't want to fall where we're having single shifts. And if we can increase our call volume and put more officers on duty, we could definitely increase our call volume by adding Richmond to it. So the call per officer would go up, but we would no longer have officers working alone. And I think that's kind of where we are in Heinsberg. I really don't feel comfortable now that things have changed. All the departments around us, including state police, there is no backup anymore. And it's very difficult, but from a budgetary standpoint, to add more than one officer per shift. And I think going with Richmond, we could definitely, as somebody had said before, if we combined in some way, shape, or form both departments, I know that I could cover 24/7 with the same or less officers on Heinsberg and the same or less officers on Richmond. We would essentially have a 24/7 department, not relying on anybody else. So I think we've come to that conclusion in Heinsberg, and so Heinsberg is very interested. I know my town manager is, and my select board as well.
Thank you. I
Right.
really appreciate that. Jay, can I just ask a follow-up
do.
or just say something else? So I agree with Patty. I think that that this having combining with Heinsberg makes a lot of sense, but I would like to have some officers that are kind of ours. I don't know that they all have to be hired by Heinsberg. And I agree also with Jay that it is important for us to have some control over what's happening in the police department. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Hello, Bonnie Stoyer. Thank you so much, Chief, for being here. This is great. I want to echo the support for joint coverage between the two towns. I think this is a fabulous idea, fiscally responsible from the sounds of it. I'm ecstatic to hear that Heinsberg is on board, because I was a little bit worried about that as well. I wanted to get back to what Jeff had mentioned and has been mentioned also by other people. A full conversation, since we're going to put the rod down, as was mentioned before, and maybe we're going to hit a pause button. And I love, a year's worth of a contract to give ourselves some space. It seems like that would also give us some space to revisit and to really look at the issues that have come up that are important. And some of them are actually by statute. So things like working with the Community Justice Center. I'm curious, I have questions. Like, I would love to talk to the Heinsberg police chief and the officers there. What does that look like in their department? I think that they have had, my understanding, I think, is that they've had some success with referring cases to the Community Justice Center from Heinsberg, where for some reason in Richmond, we've had a very difficult time with that. I would love to see how that happens. I would love to see how they perhaps interface, if they do, with Howard Mental Health Services, because I think that that's another thing that people in the community have wondered. Could we more robustly interact in terms of mental health needs? Is it always an officer that's going to show up at certain calls, right? So I would just love to have that conversation. I would love for it to be a community conversation forum, whatever you want to call it, so that we can, I think the people. And I agree with you, Jay, all the things that you said are thumbs up. Yes, those are all the things we want. And there's probably additional questions. And if we could have the stakeholders, like the people who really are the people who know about those various issues, maybe somebody from Howard Center, somebody from the Community Justice Center, heck, let's invite Sarah George to come,
Mhm.
and actually have that kind of a community conversation so that we can not do it the same as we've done it. I don't think it's worked, what we've been doing these last few times, trying to hire here. And just one other thing I wanted to mention, it was just a little bit of a I wonder kind of thought. If we had an administrator who is maybe this very extremely capable chief over in Heinsberg, could Richmond, a smaller community, I think, right? Could we have an assistant chief who is sort of the go-to person in Richmond, who could then work together with the Heinsberg chief, and then, yes, have officers that were kind of Richmond officers, but essentially be able to both kind of be a little bit more mobile and fluid and cover both towns. It just makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you.
For what it's worth, Heinsberg is about 200 more people than us.
Oh, no way, really?
Mhm.
Yeah, very similar.
Very similar size. Yeah, we're about 4,400. They're about 4,600.
Somehow I thought they were bigger. Okay.
Well, they're closer to Williston, and so they have, there's a lot more building going in there. There's a lot of housing going in there, which I wish we could have, but okay, Connie.
Thank you, Jay. I want to minimize the repetition, but I did have to say that I was on the volunteer green yesterday and had the opportunity to talk with Officer Thomas, a member of the Heinsberg Police Department, and it was just a complete pleasure. So it's great to have people who are thoughtful, respectful, helpful, there for the community. And what was on the badge didn't matter as much as the person being there and the consideration that he brought to his work that day. So appreciative of the Heinsberg Police Department, and thank you for that. Supportive of what Jeff Ford said and Patty and others about the value of creating forums where all community members can express opinions, ideas. We won't all agree, but expressing them helps us learn and also helps us grow in a direction that I think is healthy for our community. What I want to emphasize here is that about a year ago, in May of 2022, I came to the select board, and this is just reporting the past now, as a member of Richmond Racial Equity, because we had a proposal that the select board listened to and supported, and it was a proposal for police oversight in the Richmond Department. And essentially, we proposed 4 things: that there be a Richmond Police Department mission statement that reflects community values and expectations, that the Richmond Police Department works to make its documentation, such as police reports and the data on its policing activities, available to the public in an easily accessible and understandable way, that its police trainings be transparent in the sense that they are planned, conducted, and evaluated in a way that community members can understand. And fourthly, and this is probably mostly in support of what people have already said today, is to promote and conduct quarterly forums at facilitated meetings to ensure a strong connection between the Richmond Police Department and the community. Broadly stated, I think these are things that no one would disagree with, that I've heard at any rate. And have been actively worked on by police force members that have been present for the last year, as well as by Josh. And I want to respect and appreciate that. But I also want to remind us that we had a conversation about forums a year ago, and they found good support. And I would hope that they would continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. There is an issue that is on the agenda as part of this overall bullet point that I don't want us to lose sight of. If you follow Front Porch Forum, you know there have been a lot of questions about all the cruisers parked over there. We had a little bit of a fun time on the 4th. Anthony was good enough to put some of his officers in them, and we found that their batteries were all dead.
Even the Tesla?
Not all of them.
Almost all of them.
The Fords, I think in particular, that hadn't been driven for a while, needed a lot of jump starting and brake work.
So could you pop up the inventory?
Yeah.
Nah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to comment. There was a comment on the right of the screen, and I know you guys can't see it, from a gentleman, I think his name was Benjamin Holmes. And he sounds like he has insight to maybe what might be happening here. I have no idea who the gentleman is. And I don't know if you could clarify who it is, and he seems to have insight.
Or he's making it up, we don't know.
Yeah.
He's saying that people don't want to work for Richmond because we drive our officers away, and I don't think that's a fair statement.
I mean, I don't know, is he on? Would he speak?
If he wants to speak to that, sure. Benjamin Holmes, do you want to take your mic off? Let me take your mute off.
Apparently not.
Apparently not. Okay. So about the cruiser inventory, because there have been many requests that we sell some of those things. If you want to go ahead and share. Okay. Okay, so this is our current cruiser inventory. Not, yes, the Tesla is there. Okay. So as you look here, you can see that we have 6 cruisers. You can see the model year 2017 is our oldest. We have 2 of those. And our most recent is the 2022. You can see the fiscal years we acquired them, and they're estimated. That estimated life is not estimated life remaining. That's the estimated life at the start, correct?
Correct. That's, a replacement cycle was 4 years.
Okay. You can see the mileage and how much it costs to acquire them, and then the payment source and their status. So they are all paid for, correct? There's no outstanding loans on those. Now, could you remind us of the significance? Okay, italics, right. So the italics are as of December 2022. The ones that are not in italics are current as of the end of June.
And that was because the Fords would not turn on when Duncan went to check the mileage. So we just went with the report that we had from December. And they had probably been driven since December because I think the battery's been dead for a while.
Okay, so there's been a lot of questions from the community. If we have, is Officer Wilson, by the way, ever going to be available?
His orders for the military are up in September, and I
Okay.
think that's when he'll come back. He's been having a hard time getting permission from the military to come work part-time with Richmond.
That may have seemed like a real non-sequitur to many people. Officer Kevin Wilson has been an officer here for years, but he's almost always on military deployment. And he has indicated an interest in picking up some shift. So in a sense, we actually do have a police department. He's just not available till September, perhaps. But it's fun being in government. But why do we need, if we have half of an officer sort of in potentia, why do we need all 6 of these cars? And that's a question that we've heard a lot. And I would be open to any answers people would like to share. Jeff?
So I'd like to point out one difference in data here. When we got the Tesla, one of the selling points of the Tesla is that it had 150,000 mile warranty, I believe it was. And Kyle gave us an estimated life of 6 years.
Okay.
Which it does change the dynamic here a little bit. Each of the other cars had like 80,000 mile warranties or something like that, which we expected to outrun. And therefore, we'd have a car that we had to maintain, most of them. And one of the things that Kyle suggested is by having such a long warranty that covers virtually everything but the tires and brakes, that we would have less maintenance.
Okay. I'd like to call on the select board's primary automotive expert.
That was true last time.
How many of these do you want to buy, David?
First, I would want to know what the anticipated usage would be of all these vehicles. After that information, I would be inclined to really look at getting rid of Cruiser 3. It's got a lot more miles and is tied for being the oldest. And I question whether it would make any financial sense to keep it.
I know Ben said that the resale value of it would be essentially negligible. Whoever bought it would part it out. But still, it's one less.
Yeah, I mean, if we put it out to bid with a minimum, I mean, we got a very good price for the last cruiser we disposed of.
I, not being the car expert that David is, but I would observe that letting them sit for months without driving them is contraindicated.
Yeah, as evidenced by
Good
all
medical.
the boards being dead.
You have a lot of cars like that.
So you are the subject matter expert.
It's run.
So it would seem to me a related question in the intended use. So the intended use is for 6 positions, right?
Which we're not going to have
Is it-
anytime in the
Do we
foreseeable
think there's
future.
any foreseeable future in which in the next year we will have 6 positions filled? And I don't mean that to be rhetorical. I mean,
No,
it to be a
it's-
serious question.
And
if it's probably no, then
Might
it
be time to
would seem
thin the herd.
prudent to get rid of 2 of them, like the 2 oldest, and thin the herd, so to speak.
Anthony, I'm going to bounce this to you for a sec.
Oh.
If your officer, if you go to full 8-member department, do you have enough vehicles right now, or would you be counting on using some of these?
I think, I don't see combining the departments and needing more than 7 vehicles total between both departments. I don't like to see a police car go over 100,000 miles. So I would say definitely number 3.
Right, but my question is, if you have full staffing, do you need some of our vehicles to put for those officers to drive?
Not at the moment, not right now, but if we were to combine or to hire, do whatever, if we had more officers, we would definitely utilize some of the vehicles, yes.
Okay.
Would you use the Tesla?
I would like to drive the Tesla. I honestly, I've heard the Tesla conversation. I understand. I did not decide to go with an electric vehicle. I was asked that by my select board because there was a high upfront cost and there was a lot of issues as far as putting in lighting and things like that. One of the things that I think happened with Richmond is Kyle tackled that and getting the lights in there. There was a lot of difficulty with what transpired. And my take on it at this point is Richmond has spent the money on that. They might as well reap the benefits of using the car and getting from Tesla everything that's been put into it. I think that it would be again, not my decision at all, but I think selling the Tesla at this point, after all the money that's been put to do it, it would not make sense.
Okay, Aaron.
Hi. Hey, I'm just commenting as me, not MMC TV, but my concern is those cars just sitting there. Mice and things get into cars. I mean, it's not just dead batteries you have to worry about after a time. It's like at some point, more could go wrong. And a while ago, I feel like we talked about the possibility of Heinsberg taking the vehicles and using them to just drive, just to keep them running. And I'm wondering if that's a possibility. They do say Richmond on them. So anyway, thank you for taking my question.
Okay, Chuck.
Chuck,
Is any other Chucks? Yeah.
I think in previous conversation, believe it or not, there's another cruiser in the budget. For this year, I believe. Is that correct?
No.
Wasn't there one in the budget for this year?
I believe
We took it out.
Right.
I thought the conversation was that the Tesla was gonna be found to be not the world's best law enforcement vehicle, that we were gonna trade the Tesla and that funding toward an electric Crown Vic. Did that ever go anywhere?
No, so we took them out. So we were on a schedule to buy two this year
right.
in order to keep our
replacement
schedule. And we decided not to buy any cars within this budget year.
And if we sell any of these, that money goes into the general fund, doesn't go back earmarked for police vehicles, correct?
Essentially, yes. The only segregation of our money is highway. We can't touch money for anything but highway, but the rest is all the big pile. Hey, John Lynn.
Thanks. When we agreed to purchase the Tesla, it was part of a pilot project, or it was sold to us as a pilot project. The select board approved the purchase price not to exceed 52,000, and it would be evaluated after no less than 1 year. That was almost exactly 2 years ago, July 6th, 2021. In February, it was stated that the purchase price was 52,280. After incentives, it was 47,000. On the chart that was just pulled up, it says the acquired amount was 57,000, which is much higher than what the select board had approved the purchase price for. The last members of the department did not like the Tesla. If the Chief Cambridge is interested in driving it, I think he should be allowed to, and given the opportunity to give his opinion on it. And if he doesn't like it, I think we should make it go away. Right now, at the last time it was discussed by the select board, and it was tried, motion was failed, that you were going to ask for a $42,000 minimum bid for the Tesla. Since then, there have been multiple price drops, and people can buy a brand new Tesla for $40,000 after incentives. So we've lost $4,000-5,000 since February when this was last discussed. The longer we wait, the less it's going to be worth. The new Teslas are due to be released in July 2024. 2023 rather. The 2024s are coming out in July 2023, fully redesigned. I think the value is going to continue to drop. So I think we should evaluate that car. And if it's not deemed to be worthy as a police car, it should go away. And maybe we should look at a Mach-E or something that would be more appropriate.
Okay, thank you, John. Anthony, your hand is still up, and then I'm going to go back to people in the room. Did you have anything else you wanted to share?
Yes, going back to, I think my officers seem to really like it. I liked it a lot. If I had the opportunity, I would utilize it even right now with the Richmond contract. And I've also, going back to the chief and the trust issue, I 100% understand that. But with that said, I mean, the way I see Heinsberg and my town manager administration, we all get along so well, and the benefit or the at the end of the day, the people of Heinsberg and now of Richmond, we all have that as a goal, and you have to trust the people that work for you to do the right thing. And I think working with Jay, especially the past couple of days, and Josh over the last month, 2 months, it's been great, and I see the relationship only developing more, and we're getting things done. I mean, one of the things I met with Josh for an hour today, and one of the big topics was taking care of the cars, and we bought a battery today, and getting them checked out. And so things are happening. I just kind of wanted to throw those things out there.
Okay, sir. I don't know your name.
Paul Huff, Richmond.
Could you come up?
Sure. I'd posit that if you're looking to dispose of a cruiser, you dispose of the newest one, because as it sits there, you're eating the depreciation on that vehicle. And and as the vehicles just sit there, you're gonna incur costs like brakes. You're probably gonna have to redo all the brakes on these vehicles to make them safe for officers. The tires are probably dry rotting as they sit there right now too. So it's not like you can just park a vehicle and plop a new battery in it and drive it and think it's going to be safe to operate.
Mm-hmm.
And financially for the town of Richmond, I think it would make more sense to dispose of the newest vehicle. You'd get a better price and not sit there and let depreciation take its toll on it. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, Lisa.
Question: are these acquired amounts, do they include outfitting as a police vehicle?
Yes.
Radios and all that? Okay.
Radios, lights, sirens, stripes.
Alex?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Alex Nauman. I'm a paramedic with Richmond Rescue. I'd like to address the importance and urgency of creating a long-term solution for policing in Richmond from an EMS perspective. So if someone calls 911 to request an ambulance, if there is any indication there could be an injury from an assault or other violence, if there is a mental health emergency with suicidal or homicidal ideations, or if there's any indication that the scene is not safe, EMS cannot respond until the scene has been cleared by police. And the difference between having a local department respond and having Vermont State Police respond can make a big difference in patient outcomes. VSP, as it's been stated, just does not have the resources to respond adequately to many of these situations. And when relying on VSP, we often need to wait well over an hour for any response. So as seems to be the consensus, some form of regionalization is ultimately the best long-term solution, similar to how Richmond Rescue serves as a regional EMS service for over 7 towns. Combining Richmond with Heinsberg or expanding Richmond PD and contracting with Bolton and Huntington and Jericho would be a winning strategy for public safety.
Thank you. That's a point of view we hadn't heard before, and it's worth sharing. Okay, Penny?
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. So great, such good input out there. I just wanted to also share my support for a collaboration with Heinsberg. I just want to also put out there some just sort of real basic needs. I think there's some great discussion around things that we think are important and that are important. But a collaboration, this could be a very unique and special situation. Our towns are similar size. We are right next to each other. I would imagine that some of the issues that are going on in both towns are similar. We have similar needs, and not only would Heinsberg help us, but we would help them. And I love that I really appreciated what Anthony was saying about having one officer on and not having a backup. I think that's tricky. And I think having that backup person, whether it was one Heinsberg and one Richmond, they have each other's back at times. So I don't know what exactly that would look like in terms of how many officers, whether there's 3 at Heinsberg and only 1 here, et cetera. But the collaboration, as we all know, community builds strength, and we could help each other build strength through a collaborative police effort, I think. I did want to just say that my understanding of police is that they are trained to enforce the law that is, you know, these are the rules, these are the speed limits, these are the things you can't steal, you can't do this, you can't do that. They are there to help provide safety for the people of our communities and to prevent things from escalating in maybe one area where there may be whatever issues that are evolving. We're very fortunate here. I'd love to think we don't need police. I'm not someone who wants a police force as in, I love the concept of it being fair, inclusive, friendly, safe, and approachable. But I do think it's important to remember as we're hiring someone that that's what they are trained to do. And I think we need to consider that and honor that and trust that whoever we were to hire would bring not only the expertise of enforcing the law, but also the fair, inclusive, friendly, safe, and approachable person that we want in our community, which I see and feel in Anthony. Anthony, I think it seems that you are bringing that kind of person that I would see being a really good kind of person for Richmond. And if we had 2 people like yourself and someone like yourself in Richmond, imagine the regional impact that could have, not only on on enforcing what needs to be enforced, but also providing that feeling that I, as a resident, I feel that I can reach to the police if something were to be really off. And that's a very good feeling, even if I never had to use it. So I think that's really important to keep in mind as we're considering this. I also think it's really important that we not only consider what we want, but we consider what we need. And when we consider what we need, we have to see some record of what is going on. I know there's a very rough graph of, we have had 10 calls related to this. I don't know if that's enough to evaluate the need, but I think it's very important to not only consider what we want, but to really understand what we need based on what has happened in the last 10 years and where things are going, a projection. And I personally feel that the select board, I love the idea of getting everybody's input. As far as I can tell, there's been a lot of input so far, and it doesn't mean that more input can't happen from the community, but I would like to see the select board actually put together that, not necessarily proposal, but here's what we're hearing from the town so far. Here's what we think we would like. And then have the community respond to that rather than just put it out there as a blank piece of paper.
Okay.
That's
So,
one.
Kenny, we do need to start moving on to the next agenda item, but I'm going to take one last person. Kara's here in the room, and then we're going to move on to the next agenda item. But Kara, please go ahead.
Carla Bounty, I actually would like to just ask Anthony a question first, based on something he said. Anthony, you said that you're dying to drive the Tesla and your officers love it too. The only thing that the Tesla had for an issue that I was aware of was the fact that it doesn't have a cage. So is that not an issue for you and your officers? Would you be using it to actually patrol with, or would it just be a commuter car? And since you live in Richmond, the commute isn't too far. So I'm not trying to be smart aleck about it. If the Tesla can be used for policing, you know, and put to use, that's what we bought it for.
Yes, we don't put cages in all our cars. I just purchased a Charger and there is no cage going in it. And mostly because it's for traffic enforcement. We usually don't put cages. It's just something that I've done, not put cages in traffic cars. I see the Tesla as a traffic car. Worst case scenario, if we had somebody really aggressive, we call the other officer on shift. But I have arrested many people and put them in the front seat. But again, it's a traffic car, and I see the same thing with the Tesla. The other thing that while I have you guys, I just wanted to say that to go back to somebody else's comment, we do have a great relationship with the CJC and the state's attorney, and I think it's really important to constantly evaluate and look at the numbers. Like Stephanie Seguino's report, for one, it was reported that she had said that a lot of people, police departments, report the numbers, but police chiefs don't look at the numbers. I think it's very important to constantly evaluate and to see where your police department's going and to report on that to the town and to the town manager.
Can I follow up now? Thank you for that reply. And I think Richmond didn't always have that backup officer. So that's the key piece to the puzzle, I think, that was missing. So the fact that you don't need a cage in your car and the officers didn't want to use it without a cage here is a total game changer on the Tesla. For me, who is somebody who wanted them to sell this vehicle 7 months ago, or even 9 months ago when we were looking at budget time periods. So if you would use it, thank you. Let's make that happen. I totally support you all possibly entering into a year-long contract with Heinsberg so that they can hire those 2 other officers full-time. I support us moving forward with potentially finding if this will work for us, having it be the pilot year with
Heinsberg while we develop what are our needs, what are our wants. The one thing I really strongly recommend you do as a very fiscally responsible individual here is I think you should minimally cut your fleet in half. I think you should immediately sell three of the cars. At minimum, I think you could even sell 4 of them, because 2 extra cars on hand, the Tesla being one of them, and whatever other one that Anthony's officers would want to use, be part of the contract with them. The only concern I have, and you guys can find out the answer to this, is if a Heinsberg police officer wearing a Heinsberg uniform gets out of a Richmond police cruiser to a out-of-stater or somebody from outside who sees a Richmond car and sees a Heinsberg uniform, they might go, is this a scheme? Is this real? You know what I mean? What's going on here?
They'll say all of them aren't safe for them.
So whatever you have to do to make sure that those 2 things go together for the next year, but I strongly recommend, I mean, they were great for the 4th of July, and yes, that's a celebration time period, but I didn't hear of any incidents or any problems, and they all seemed very friendly. So good job with whatever you're doing, Anthony. Good luck, select board. I know I hold your feet to the fire all the time. I know you said be patient. Thank you for working through this.
Thank you. I think we could certainly work through some of those logistics. I just want to reiterate, I don't often put people in the front seat, but that was just a kind of a worst case scenario. I believe that cars should be bought and bought for a purpose. We have our Tahoe, which has scales in it, and we use it to weigh trucks. That's our truck enforcement car. Our Durangos are all around enforcement. I put half cages in those. And the Charger I see as a traffic car, and that's why there's no cage. And I see the same thing with the Tesla. It would be a traffic car. I just kind of wanted to throw that out there, that kind of the purpose. If I had a choice in this, I would say that the Fords would be the first to go. Just by looking at how the condition versus the Durangos and the Tesla.
Okay, so I want to thank everybody tonight who's discussed policing. If you were looking at the agenda, you'll notice this has been the 90-minute long, 30-minute session. There's a reason for that. There's a lot of pressure built up, and sometimes you have to give people a chance to let the pressure out. Everybody tonight who spoke has the best interests of Richmond at heart. I know that. I want to thank everybody who shared both online and in person. I don't think we want to necessarily take a vote tonight which cruiser to sell or if we should sell one, but I think that would be a very good discussion item for the next agenda. And maybe is there anybody here, just out of curiosity, who is adamantly against selling any of our cruisers? Okay.
I'm not adamantly against, but I would like to have a longer discussion about. Which ones,
agreed, right.
Which ones and how many?
Yeah.
Right.
Which one and how, I think that's the right question.
So let's put that on next week's agenda.
Okay, can we get an expert opinion maybe from Anthony?
That, yes, again, that would be, that's why I don't want to do it tonight, but
Yeah.
but I think it's a reasonable question to have. I mean, they're not doing us any good out there. And it just looks silly.
Okay, thank you for allowing us to all talk.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda.
Can I ask one question?
Oh, please do.
Before we move on. If we want to reconvene the subcommittee, do we want to do that?
Yes.
Because if we want to do that, we had select board members on that. There was Barhill and June Heston. And if we want to do that and try to get a meeting, I mean, it could take a while to schedule, but if you want me to start trying to schedule a meeting tomorrow, it would be helpful to know which 2 select board members.
I would like to be on it. And Bard, do you still want to be on it?
I think it would be helpful for continuity, and I am also interested. I think it's worth resurrecting that, which is, as I've seen, twofold: the near-term contract, and then the springboard to the longer-term engagement. We've used the dating metaphor ad nauseum on this, like, you know, first date, then we're gonna like have the 3rd date, then we're like, are we gonna get married or not?
Or protection.
Okay.
But I think that the longer term thing, which probably kicks in as Anthony described their process in probably September-ish, it'll be here before we know it.
Yeah.
And I think so that's probably gonna go along for a while. And also, I think we mentioned this at this group before, that we should get a copy of that report.
Absolutely,
when it comes forward.
Yeah.
I would add a third thing that we might want to contemplate, maybe this is work, at a future select board meeting. We've heard some talk about like, what do we want? We originally pictured a police chief helping us with that engagement. And maybe we should contemplate a contractor or something else, you know. I just wrestle, I'm looking around the room wrestling, do select board members have 5 or 8 hours a week to commit to that project for some extended duration of time? Versus, especially with our vacancy saving, maybe engage a contractor as an independent entity to lead some of that, similar to Heinsberg. Maybe not at the 90,000.
Maybe we
price
take
point,
their,
but-
their report and change some names and.
Exactly. Let's be honest.
Or at least read it and get a roadmap. Yeah.
But I think the stakeholder engagement of our community stakeholders is necessary beyond what theirs was there. So I think that's maybe the next meeting or thereafter to talk about that process where we engage.
Are you suggesting that thinking about that as part of the committee's report or?
I
or is
think
it
if they're
part of?
parallel tracks, I think we engage in the contract, we engage in the long-term discussion, and meanwhile, in a parallel swim lane, we have some discussions with stakeholders about what do we want from the police, which will help to shape long-term relationship of whatever sort.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah. it does,
Let's see if Heinsberg wants to start chatting again.
Okay.
If they don't take our calls or if they say they have a headache, well,
the only thing that that I'd like to say is I'm interested in this process as well. And I know we can't have three members on on this committee because then we have to warn every meeting. So I don't know how we choose that, you know, I mean, Jay, I am so impressed by how many balls you seem to keep in the air. There are quite a few. I see.
I am no longer vice chair of water and sewer.
There you go. Congratulations.
Is that what did it?
Okay, so but look, first we have to get Heinsberg to want to come to the table. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next item on the agenda is consideration of making an appointment to the Andrews Community Forest Committee. For the public who may not be intimately involved in town committee appointment processes, the Andrews Community Forest Committee has a structure pretty much unlike any of our others. It's a 9-member committee where one member is basically the representative of the Conservation Commission, and one is a representative of the Trails Committee, and then the other 7 are selected by the ACF members themselves and then forwarded to us. So the select board, as it's currently constituted, has only indirect control over the ACF committee. We have a nomination from the Trails Committee for Mr. Paul Houff. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Is Paul with us tonight? Paul, want to come up and tell us why you want to be on the ACF committee?
Sure. I've been involved in the ACF committee, attending most of the meetings for the past 3 years. I'm interested in helping the committee work through the process of balancing environmental concerns and recreational access. It's a subject I'm really interested in, so I thought it would be a good match. Plus, I was approached by an ex-chair of the Trails Committee. And I think you need to look at the bylaws of the ACF. It's actually, there's a representative from the Trails Committee and also a Trails Committee recommendation. So there, and also as well as the conservation.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I just said.
Right.
Okay, well, I've read some of your comments in Front Porch Forum.
Sure.
Attacking me and others for saying things like, where were we when these plans were being developed? I don't appreciate that. I really don't, because my job is not to go to every ACF meeting and be a part. That's what the committee is for. And we've also, I will just share, we've received a lot. I've received a lot of emails asking us not to appoint you. And the main, they did not ask their identities to be released, but the attitude that I've picked up from listening to your comments on recorded meetings and things is that you seem to want us to cut to the chase, open all the trails and stop the public comment. And that's not really what I'm looking for here. That's just my 2 cents. I would be inclined to vote against you and ask the Trails Committee to nominate someone who's a little more interested in considering the possibility that maybe the current direction of the ACF committee is not the right one. Any thoughts from anybody else on the select board?
You know, this is an awkward moment, Colin. First, thank you for stepping forward, because, you know, just putting your name forward is a courageous act in a sense. I've heard similar things, you know, mostly it's sensitive, you know, people, some of whom are anonymous and some of whom are not. But I looked at some of the things you wrote, like, if you feel you're not being heard, it's because you're not participating. I will tell you my personal experience with the ACF committee. Very early in the process, I asked about wildlife corridors. This is at least 3 years ago, and I was told that would take too long. Since then, it's become clear that there are wildlife corridors and that the fine scale mapping of flora and fauna was necessary. And in the beginning, it seemed not to get the attention perhaps that it deserved. Another flaw that I saw in the materials presented, the first maps of the Andrews Community Forest conspicuously failed to include the existing agricultural roads and trails that were in place. And that seemed highly relevant to me. When I was asked about it, I was told, well, don't worry about that because people are not going to use them. Those go to questions of credibility and transparency for the committee in the process. So I will just say I was participating and felt like I was not being heard early on. And that was my personal experience. I know there's this increasing polarization about mountain biking. And I think people are concerned about an anti-mountain biking group. My personal perception is that's because of the very vociferous sort of advocacy from the mountain biking community, including both Richmond residents and non-residents. At one point, I received 20 emails, and it clearly was an organized email chain, which is fun. But it included things like you should close down Dugway Road so that would be available for mountain biking access, you know, a couple days a week. Clearly, somebody who didn't live in this town was not aware of that. In the meeting up at Camel's Hump Middle School, a resident in another town, when they were expressing concern about some of the compromises, said, well, none of this is going to hurt my mountain biking experience, right? And my only point there is that I think one of the things we wrestle with the community forest plan is this dynamic about mountain biking. And I think the issue is not, do we have it or not have it, but the question of how do we reach a comfortable compromise. And I will say several residents that I've talked to have told me they just walked away from the process because they felt they weren't being heard. So to your point of, you know, you're not participating, people told me they walked away because they felt neither heard nor respected.
Okay.
That's what people have told me.
One, I wasn't on the committee for any of this, and I was making public comments. So most of the time, I feel I was being heard. There's been more public comment periods for the Andrews Forest Committee process than there's been, I think, on any subject in town in a long time. And I was responding to people who said their voice wasn't being heard, meaning that I took that as they weren't able or didn't have the opportunity to speak or to give their opinion. Now, whether the people on the committee listened or ignored them or whatever, I have nothing to do with that because I wasn't part of the committee at that point.
Understood.
Okay.
Except for your point in April 2023.
What's that?
My question for Jay and June and all the people who feel not represented in the ACF management plan is where the heck have you been for the past 3 years? That's your comment on Front Porch Forum, I think.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Sure.
Where have you been? If I've attended a bunch of those meetings, and what generally happens, you guys know this all the time, is that a lot of people do a lot of work, and at the last minute, people will come out of the woodwork and say, hey, I didn't have a chance to be heard, or I didn't get my opinion in, or you should do this, and that's fine. But I think the accusation that the committee wasn't allowing public comment or listening to public comment is whether they took that into account or not, that's on them. I wasn't part of the committee.
Okay, I'd like to add a couple more things. when we appoint a committee on any subject, the town has a policy which we've formally adopted of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And equity and inclusion do not just mean we're nice to people of color. It means that we look out for and try to include all groups within our town, the aged, the young, people with limited mobility, people with vision problems. And I have seen absolutely no sign whatsoever of the Andrews Committee, Forest Committee doing any of that. What I have heard is things like our number one priority, this has been said a number of times, our number one priority, it's in our charter, we must do this, is connect to the SIPA Sunshine Trail. That's not anywhere in the charter. That's the number one priority of the committee to that we've got to link this to an extensive outside trail of mountain bike trails. No, that's not the number one priority. The number one priority is developing an ACF plan that includes all constituencies. Another thing I've been told is, and this was again told me by a member of the committee, that the charter requires all trails in the ACF to be mixed use, meaning they must have mountain bikes. That's nowhere in the charter either. The fact that the ACF committee is free to select its own members with the exception of those nominated by the Trails Committee and nominated by the Conservation Commission has led to a process that is frankly broken. The number of emails I've gotten from people who have said, I have attempted to communicate my thoughts at ACF committee meetings and have been dismissed, ignored, or told that I was not talking, what my comments weren't germane to the discussion. I have a very long list.
Okay,
And
but
so,
I don't know what to say to you about that because wasn't a member of the committee.
I know you're not.
I am approved or appointed. I will be open to any and all communication, whether it be in the form. And I want to get to your DEI thing because you'd mentioned that before in your email. And quite frankly, I think my response to that is you first, meaning this board is pretty darn homogeneous. Okay. And from what I can tell, it's guys over 50 and a woman over 50, and your political views, I'm guessing, are all pretty much in lockstep. Okay. I'm happy to step aside if there's somebody who wants to come forward and feels that they fit that DEI mantra better. And I think I will do that if you take the same pledge. If you say, hey, I'm willing to step down to allow somebody who has a different perspective or point of view, or I just think it's not a relevant topic to bring into the conversation.
The select board is elected from people who run. We do not hand pick our members.
Sure you do. You were appointed the first time you're.
And then I stood for election and was elected.
I don't want you to confuse somebody running unopposed as to an omniscient.
Okay, so
here's my thing. I've got a letter of recommendation from the guy who basically asked me to be their representative, and that's Willie Lee. Can I read that?
I think it's pretty much moot at this point.
Yeah. How so?
I think we need to move.
No, I want to put it in the record because I'm trying to come here and donate my time and effort to the town of Richmond, and you're basically telling me that I can't.
What I'm hearing is that you have an agenda and you don't like anybody who gets in the way of that agenda.
How so? What are you
listening to? Concerns from this board. You're not taking any accountability or acknowledging any of it. You're pointing barbs back at us and making accusations against us. This is not a productive conversation. You were not.
This has been a one-way conversation.
Over me right now. I was in favor of your nomination after your performance right now. I am opposed. This is ridiculous. I'm insulted.
I'm insulted.
You should be.
Yeah, I am. So I'd like to read the recommendation into the minutes.
We need to move.
No, we're moving on, Paul. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make one statement about Andrews Community Forest in general. I don't know if you're aware that Nature Conservancy organization, they've been studying climate change, and climate change is causing about 27,000 species per year to migrate north and from the south of the United States and central US north. And guess where they're coming? They're coming through Vermont. For the most part, can't go through the Adirondacks, can't go through Lake Champlain, can't go through the White Mountains. They're coming through Vermont. And to do that, if we have any chance of helping the species get to where they want to go to live, we need contiguous forest.
That's
It
true.
needs to be uninterrupted. And I don't see mountain biking as a real help in causing that.
I don't
Not
either.
against anyone, but I just want to say that.
I think mountain biking is a great sport,
Mhm.
but we've got what, 150 miles of mountain bike trail in Richmond. We have very few trails that are accessible to people of limited mobility. And speaking as somebody who's been walking through the Andrews Community Forest and had mountain bikers curse me and tell me to get off their trails, I think that we have a very toxic. I'll close with this. I've been investigating what it would take to change the charter of the ACF committee so it's all appointed and so that the members are not picking their friends to be on the committee. I think that's really what we need to be doing at this point.
Can I make a point about the accessibility issues? I've donated tens, probably over 100 hours to the driving range project, which is making a trail network in Bolton for adaptive bikers. And I think that's I've met one of the guys, and that's just been a colossal game changer for me in helping him re-experience an activity that he loves in the woods.
Okay.
And I think if you want to discuss mountain biking, I'm happy to discuss it. And I think what's being lost here is the Andrews Forest Committee, I thought was on, historically, mountain biking trails have been rake and ride, and a lot of it was done illegal back in the
Okay,
day.
I'm sorry, Paul, we need to move on. Our next item on the agenda is consideration of.
I really think that that's out of order. Like,
No, it's not out of order. You've had your say. We're moving
no,
on.
I want to read what,
You are done. You are done.
man,
Our next item on the agenda is
you are a piece of
consideration of,
work.
thank you, sir.
Really,
Our next item on the agenda is,
it's really bad.
our next item on the agenda is consideration of accepting a donation of riverbank steps from Umiak. For those of you who are following this conversation, the lovely people at Umiak have built a set of steps to aid in taking out kayaks, I guess, not canoes, right? Just kayaks, right?
Tubers.
Tubers. Okay, I think kayaks because I'm a kayaker. And there was some question about liability and would the town assume liability? And so you've come up with an interesting solution to it. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so what we'd like to do is donate the steps to the town of Richmond. We would continue to do any maintenance to the steps. We would at the start of our tubing season, which is anywhere from mid-June to July 1st, we would install the steps. And then at the end of the tubing season, when things cool down, the end of August, 1st of September, by the 15th of September, we would remove the steps. If there was high water events that might take out the steps of a flood situation, we would monitor that and take those steps out. If there was any maintenance required to the steps, damage caused by a high water storm or something like that, we would fix the steps and address them. So we would take charge of all maintenance and all labor involved with the steps. But the steps would be a town property, just like other bridges and trails that are out on the trail system. And that would allow for the town to envelop the steps in its assets and under its insurance policy. And then Umiak would retain its policy as well and list the town as an additional insured on our policy. So if any of our staff, any of our clients are, that are doing tubing with us, it would be all covered under our liability coverage.
Okay, so questions from the select board. Lisa?
Yeah, Steve, the Trails Committee, I think, was dismayed that some of your clients have been going wherever from point A to point B, point B being the river, dragging tubes, maybe dragging canoes, kayaks, whatever. They're not happy about that because some trails have been defaced or new ones have been cut through some forest that really shouldn't be disturbed that way. Can you put in a little bit of signage to also direct people to the steps? Because it seems like they're finding their own way to the river. that'll do two things. It'll keep that damage from happening and it'll make sure your stairs get used.
Yes,
So, all right.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, we can do that.
I will just observe as a regular visitor to Overrocker on a sunny, like, summer afternoon. There are many users of the river other than Umiak customers. I mean, there have been times I've looked up the river and seen 3 canoes, 6 kayaks, 4 tubes, 3 guys with a beer cooler. It's just like.
MDSS Titanic, right?
So I think that, you know, some of the use illustrates our conversations about parking and the use of the riverbank generally. In our conversations earlier, I've had a couple of conversations about that part of the riverbank to cite these steps where it's less prone to erosion, and also because that whole part of the riverbank is essentially silt. If you walk up and down it, like, it immediately starts giving way. It has no sort of very little like body, if you will. So when we asked before about Trails Committee and other folks, did they think this was a good idea? They thought it was a good idea, partly to reduce
Trail, yeah.
specific to the trail. And the other thing is to recognize there are other items constructed on the trail, like that go over small ravines that already exist, and the Trails Committee has installed and maintained those historically. So at least from my perspective, this sort of fits our broader approach to the trail along the river there. For what that's worth.
So, you know, I would like to say thank you. You know, I mean, so this is, you know, we identified some challenges with this idea. And it appears like we've come up with a solution that meets all of those challenges. So, you know, I'm definitely in favor of this.
Okay, would anyone like to make a motion?
Jay.
Oh, sorry. Oh, stop
Um,
hiding behind Josh.
I know, I like leaving on the wall. Denise Barnard, I really have grave concerns about what we're about to do. When they first came, I was at that first meeting. And then we had to go to our attorney, then we found out, no, we can't do it because of liability. Are we not even listening to Lisa, what she just said about the paths that are being made? And how many people from Richmond are really utilizing this? Not, I doubt hardly any of them are Richmond residents. And what are Richmond residents getting out of this? I mean, I asked you to donate a pass to the library.
Yeah, so
Nothing's been done.
Nothing's
been done.
What I mentioned to you was that I don't see a pass at the library working well with our reservation system, but I would like to do something for Richmond
The
residents.
Echo has one over there, Shelburne Farms has one over there. Many different places in Chittenden County where our lower income residents of Richmond can go over and get a pass with their family for the day. That should have been worked on, but no, we go to our attorney, we get a legal thing saying, don't do it because of liability, and here we're doing it.
What I did say at that meeting was that we would give a discount to Richmond residents. So if they were needed to shuttle, either go up with our tubes or go up with their own tubes, that we would give a discounted rate, which we are offering a $15 rate for Richmond residents.
And how are you getting that information out? Has it been told to anyone?
We haven't even gone through the final steps here. So
I just think you're making a huge mistake and we're taking on.
Just a point of fact, both VLCT passive and our attorney agree that this is an acceptable way forward. So I'd just like to reflect in the record, the attorney did not tell us not to do it. There was concerns about liability, but as a donation to the town, he said this is an acceptable way to do that for women.
What Denise was saying is the attorney told you not to do it the way it was proposed, so you came up with a loophole by accepting a donation, okay? She wasn't wrong with what she was saying, okay? So please do not make, sometimes we are attending meetings. If we're hearing something wrong, that's okay. But it was my understanding from Jeff forward that it was not going forward. And I think he even commented to Angela at a ARPA meeting that it wasn't going forward because of the lawyer thing. So I'm not trying to, I don't want Denise to feel like she's being attacked for something that she did here.
So I'm not trying to attack her. I somewhat take issue with the use of the word loophole. When we asked the Trails Committee representative, did they think it was a good idea to put steps on this riverbank? They said, yes, it is.
It was a loophole in the sense of the legal loophole, and that's all I was talking about. Barb,
So
because
I
the
don't
lawyer
think-
said no. I don't want to argue. I just wanted to make Denise not feel like she was.
For the record, I think the term loophole is misused and ill-considered in the description of this discussion.
Okay, I'm going to give Angela, I'm going to ask for you in a second, but let me give an example of loopholes that we do all the time around here, if you want to call them loopholes. We needed volunteers to direct traffic at the July 4th parade and, well, really to close the roads, but we need them to be legal out on the streets. And so we said, okay, if we can get formally trained as flaggers by passive, then we are legal flaggers. And then if we sign as volunteers, we're covered by the town's workers' comp policy. At the end of the day, the goal was to be able to legally close the roads, but by jumping through, well, we're going to take the flagger training, even though we're never going to work a day in our life as flaggers, and we're going to sign up as volunteers. Well, the volunteers we were, but that got us on the workers' comp. Sometimes you do this little tango just to make it all legal. And that's kind of how I see it here. My take on it is that I'd rather have the steps there and make people go toward the steps instead of not have the steps there and continue to have social trails being created every which way. That's kind of, I'd rather have the steps than not have the steps. And if our attorney says this will work, then that sounds like a plan to me. But Angela, go ahead.
So I want to say, I also agree with you. This is absolutely right. What these steps will do is direct all of that traffic, Richmond or non-Richmond resident traffic that's on the river. That it will be donated and maintained by Umiak, fantastic. We will, as a town, incur the liability, right? You all will vote, and here's where my concern is. Because I want you to be consistent. That's what I'm asking you to do. Please be consistent. You will vote to put a structure in the floodplain. Why is that irrelevant? Because when we get to ARPA funding, if any of it is allowed to be used in volunteer green for recreational purposes, your DRB has already approved structures for recreational purposes in the floodway. So I just want you to be consistent, okay? That's all I want you to do. Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to note just one other thing. Is as that's town land, if somebody comes across or falls face down mud and drowns or something terrible like that, steps aren't there, we can still be sued. We can be sued whether the steps are there or not. I think this just, my main goal is, as I think John Cart said a while back, that portion of the forest is just getting social trail to death right now. And I'd really like to try to prevent that. Kara.
Just the question of, there's going to be an agreement with a donation, just like when somebody donates the road, you have to bring it up to a certain stand, you know, whatever that's called. With the donation of this, there's going to be inspections, maintenance. Is there a term limit on that? And when it comes time, if they don't want to, if they close business, sell business, do whatever they do, and they need to be removed from there or anything like that, is that also built in, and does the contract renew annually? What does that look like with the donation of this? I mean, Barb, when I say loophole, I don't mean it negatively either. That's what Jay just showed you was a positive example of a loophole because it was a different way of what was originally presented.
Okay. So
just to be clear, this structure will be installed, maintained, and removed annually. So like, we can make a different decision next year if we want to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so
Thank you.
and my understanding is that if we pass this motion tonight, $15 rates for Richmond residents will be available tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay, Karen.
The last thing is if we had some trails cut that we didn't want cut or any work done there, this is to benefit his commercial business. He's going to use Richmond's parking lot and Richmond's access to the river to benefit his business. Is there anything we are getting out of it as Richmond, like, can he help contribute to maybe fixing those trails that got cut in there, like maybe some plantings or any, or helping at widen
Let's
any
call it
trails
question.
you want?
Okay,
So I move to accept the donation of the riverbank steps from Umiak for installation at the riverbank near the Overrockers parking area.
I'll second.
okay, we have a motion from Jeff Ford to move to accept the donation of the riverbank steps from Umiak for installation of the riverbank near Overrockers. This was seconded by Lisa Miller. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, we thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is kind of an interesting one. It's listed as a 5-minute topic. It doesn't have to be more than a 5-minute topic, but let me tell people who are listening for the recording now or later, it has to do with the fiscal year 24 municipal tax rate. Every year, we pass a budget and then we look at the grand list and then we say, based on the grand list values and our needs to fund our budget, what should the tax rate be? Now, this year, we have had a townwide reappraisal, and unless you were on Mars, a lot of real estate prices went up. Our grand list went up significantly. So our rate,
The tax rate screen.
yeah, if you want to go ahead and pull that up. I'm about done summarizing. Our rate would not need to be the same rate because the grand list value has gone up so much.
Right.
And so that's what Josh is going to show us here.
We're still raising the same dollar.
Exact. We're raising the same dollar amount.
The formula to get there is different.
That's right.
Right, so we look at how much needs to be raised in taxes to support the general fund, which is the same as was voted in for the budget for FY 24, which is $2,332,257. The highway amount needs to be raised in taxes to support the highway budget is $1,237,646. The town voted the 1% to the conservation reserve, or the 1 cent. So now with the new grand list, which is down here, $7,816,261. That conservation request or donation is $78,163. Last couple of years, it's been around the $45,000 mark based on that grand list. So that goes up because it's directly tied to the grand list. So then you get a total amount to be raised of $3,648,065.03. Based on the grand list, you then multiply that out and get a tax rate of 0.4667. We also have some exemptions for veterans in Richmond Terrace. Essentially, there's up to a $10,000 exemption for veterans that is supported by the school tax. Richmond has voted to go to $40,000. So we, as residents, still need to make up the tax that was lost to the school for that $30,000 for all, I think it's 13 veterans. So there's a separate calculation that we do over here that says, well, how much, zero in on this a little bit better, sorry. So this calculation looks at, well, how much would be going to the school for veterans in Richmond Terrace based on the homestead and non-homestead school rates. So that's $11,869 that would be going to the school that's not, because Richmond voted for those exemptions. So we need to add 0.0015 to the tax rate to make up for that $11,000, which then, as we pop back over to the tax rate, we add that in right here to get a total tax rate of 0.4682. And as Jay said, this is a bit of an anomalous year because usually that would probably go up in a tax year. But the prior year municipal tax rate was 0.7164 because that was based on a lower grand list. So when you have more value in the grand list, you need to raise less per $1,000. So it's actually a decrease of 0.2481. But to really look at your impact, and if you're looking at your tax bill, you need to look at what your previous grand list value was and your tax rate, and now look at the new grand list value and the tax rate.
Questions from the select board? Questions from Cara? Oh, come on. Questions from Denise?
I would ask the board to lower the general budget item, some amount that we're saving on the police force. We have a lot of elderly in town that are just being able to make their tax payments. And things are changing. We see the elderly are all moving out. We're having a substantial savings on our police force. I would ask that you lower it.
Jeff?
I can't imagine how we would do that. So we have an approved budget and that we're working off of, that we approved at town meeting. In order to go back and try to figure out what that would do to the tax rate, it just doesn't seem like the right time to do it. It seems like the right time to figure that out is doing our budget process and not at the time when we set the tax rate.
Jeff, already we have a surplus because we know, we've just heard, we're spending $13,000 a month on our police force now. So if you, and we're talking, I mean, the group that came tonight, very organized, they love it. They want to move forward. If we're going to be spending $13,000 a year only on our police, $13,000, I'm sorry, a month on our police, can we do the numbers? And then reduce that. I'm not saying reduce it by 13,000, but reduce it by some amount. Because we know we're not going to spend it and we're going to have a surplus there.
Well, the narrow question, can't we budget 13,000 a year for the balance of the fiscal year? I would suggest no, since we actually haven't engaged in a contract or approval by the collective bargaining agent to say, what would that look like for complete services for the year? That's what it's costing us right now. So that's the first question, like, what would it cost? But the second question is a really rational one. If we're saving a bunch of money in a department, is there a way to make a mid-year adjustment in the budget and reduce the tax rate? And I think that is, as Jeff implies, a kind of legal question. I'm not sure how we did it.
I don't know.
I think it has been done, but it's not something one does just like that. You'd have to put some spreadsheets together.
So maybe that's a task or agenda item for the next meeting to say, is
And I
there?
realize it's July 5th and our budget just went to bed 6:30. But do you agree there's got to be a substantial surplus in the police line?
Well, what I would agree is what we've done for a couple of years, if I remember correctly, is the surplus at the end of one fiscal year. A bunch of that is put into the cost of the next year, so it's rolled over. To reduce.
We know how well that worked with water sewer.
I'm just gonna say, don't start on water sewer. Water sewer is in the sewer because of deferred maintenance.
Yeah.
What I'll just guarantee, whatever money we have in surplus in water sewer will not be enough to do all the work that we have to do on.
But
the
I
water sewer
think
system.
as a taxpayer,
That's
I
fair.
think if you guys acted, excuse me, Lisa, and you, man.
Okay.
If you acted and gave some back, knowing that we haven't, you could be the heroes.
Did we do that?
It's like 500,000, wasn't it? I think it was like,
And- and-
it was like 500,000.
Can I take numbers for you just for 1 second?
Sure.
Okay, here's the situation. You've chosen to use some of your unallocated toward your budget revenues, okay? That is not your unallocated for at the end of this fiscal year. What she's saying is you're going to have a surplus of from FY 23 that you haven't even calculated yet. Hold on, hold on. Haven't even calculated yet. So along with some of the money that you've decided, but what she's also saying is you are going to bill us for a service that you're not going to provide at the value of what you billed us for. So she's saying, you know, you might have a budget for your police department of $750,000. Can you knock that down even by cutting it in half? Because it's going to take you a while to get even the level of what you're looking for. So when you say 6 months out, that's all she was trying to say is between the combination of your excess money from FY 23, not your allocated that's in the bank.
Here.
And the lack of services in the sense of you don't need a full
I
$750,000.
totally understand what she was trying to say, and that's why I was raising the question is what is the select board's authority and process to do that in the middle of the fiscal year. So we just approved the budget. We voted the budget and said, we're gonna put this much aside. I think generally select board's ability to.
We might have to do a
tax
special-
rate go up or down is pretty limited, but I don't know. It's never come up before in mid-year. How do we adjust?
I suspect we would need to call a special town meeting, because ultimately the budget is passed by the voters, and the budget, the voters set the budget.
It's not about setting the budget. It's not about setting the budget.
It's
about
reducing
setting-
the amount to be
It's
raised.
about setting the tax rate, because you know you got a budget approval to raise that money and to spend it. And if you know you're not gonna spend it all, you don't have to raise it all.
So what you're saying is deliberately, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, deliberately underfund the budget because we know we won't need it anyway.
That's what Denise is saying.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to explain to you what she's
Mhm.
trying to propose.
And I think I understand that, and that's why I'm asking the question of the attorney or VLCT. What is the precedent and protocol for doing that, for adjusting tax revenues that are different from and less than the approved budget?
Jeff.
So I do understand what you're suggesting. I'm not saying that I don't understand it, and I'm not saying that I don't necessarily agree with it. I just think this is the wrong vehicle, and I think it's a really slippery slope. Because anybody could pick out any one thing out of it, and if we had to call a special meeting to reapprove our budget, we could be doing that every month.
Right.
Because people would like one thing or another thing. So I really don't think that this is the appropriate time or the appropriate vehicle for addressing that. I think the appropriate time to address it is during our budget process. And what happened this past year, what happened this past year is we did address it at our budget process, and we reduced our budget by $500,000 because of savings from personnel. You know, so I think that's the appropriate time to be discussing it, and I don't think setting the tax rate is the appropriate vehicle.
Yeah, we don't have the crystal ball. It's good enough to see how it's going to go for the next 6 months on police services. If the contract goes belly up, something goes wrong. I mean, if we knew what it would be, we wouldn't let it happen. But if something like that happened, we had to buy services from police or us, rentals or something, our costs would probably be higher than ever before. And I don't know that we can reduce a tax rate with the assurance that nothing is going to cost more than what we budgeted, that it's only going to cost less.
I think Denise raises a valid point, and the door doesn't need to be slammed on this, because we can talk to our attorneys, we can do some research and go through this very deliberately. But for tonight, we do need to set a tax rate, even if we find that there is a door that we can go through to revisit it.
Can this be revisited and like you're saying?
Anything will be revisited.
I think that's the proper thing, is to look at this and come back as a follow-up in a future meeting. Sometimes, is it possible, and if so, how? Whether it's a good idea or not, we can then bring that up again, but like.
Does anyone even know what the surplus is as of June 30?
No,
I don't know that number yet.
they don't have the numbers yet.
Could we find that out for maybe next meeting?
I don't know, when do we know?
I know I'm
Can get an estimate. I'll see where we're at.
only on the police portion. That's the only thing I'm interested in.
Well,
Okay, so let's talk about this.
it's gonna be the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's keep open the possibility of talking about this next meeting, or if it has to be the meeting after that. I'm always happy to listen to a discussion, even if we ultimately say logistically it'd be hard to do. Angela?
I just wanted to validate Jeff's concern, but I also want to say, Jeff, that this particular issue about the police department and its funding and the lack of spending of that money that's been earmarked, this would be not a standalone, but I don't think that the slippery slope you're describing is going to happen with every town resident coming in wanting you to have a special meeting for every little thing. This is this is a very big issue for the town. You know that. This would be,
Catastrophic.
this
for our
would be,
police.
but this would go a long way toward demonstrating a level of responsibility that hasn't occurred yet. I'm just saying, I don't think it'll happen as badly as you think, Jeff. And this, if you revisit it in the next meeting or in 4 weeks, whenever the financials are available, I think that would be very prudent of you.
I'm not opposed to doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm thrilled by the level discussion we've had tonight on the police department. I've been wanting to have that discussion for quite some time. And I agree with your frustration that we budgeted for this much and we've gotten this much, you know, and I think we're working hard at trying to address that. I don't know how the numbers are gonna work out.
But like I said, I think it's something we can keep open and look at as more details come in.
You guys, because only in the last few years have you used unallocated funds and so you've learned that if you didn't spend it all, you should put some back in.
Yeah.
I gotta commend you. It's something new. It's something new. You've just started over the last year to 2 years. So thank you. And that's all she's trying to do is maybe try to catch it earlier than wait till next budget season.
Fair enough.
I think that describes it well, that this is a year and a half usually in the cycle
Yeah.
before it hits. And so the question that Denise raises is, can you speed it up?
But I think once those tax bills go out July 15th, just the office nightmare, it's gonna be a nightmare to reissue all those tax bills.
No, it's not. It's not that. It's not that difficult.
Okay,
And when we sell cruisers, we'll have more.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the interest of,
That's right.
in the interest of moving on, do we have a motion?
Where is it?
Bottom of page 4.
This is Bard. I'd like to move to set the FY 24 municipal tax rate at 0.4682.
Jay, this is David. I'll second.
Okay, with motion from Bard Hill, seconded by David Sander to set the town of Richmond fiscal year 24 municipal tax rate at 0.4682. Any further discussion? Okay, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I.
Jeff, I. David, I.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye. Thank you. Okay, our next item, complete shift of gears, what we were just talking about. It has to do with the federal law that mandates that post offices fly the POW MIA flag on, I believe, six specific days of the year. The post office downstairs has asked if they could do so either on the flagpole out here on the front or on the flag holders outside the post office entrance. Historically, the select board's been a little bit wary of going overboard with special purpose flags for fear that this would turn into something that the public could just fly anything they wanted. Our attorneys were consulted about this and said that this would still be seen as government speech. It would not be public speech. It would be government speech. It's not, you know, it's just like for the same, the Black Lives Matter sign out front is government speech. It's speech by the select board. And so under our lawyer's opinion, which is in the packet, allowing the POW MIA flag to fly on the outside of the building is still, that's not a public forum. A flagpole on the wall of the post office is not a public forum. We can grant them the right to fly it there without opening the door that we would have to let everybody do it. And it would allow the post office to comply with the mandate that they do fly those flags. That's my 30-second or 1-minute summary. Is there anything more you want to add or?
No, well, the attorneys recommended a policy, a flag policy. I guess apparently we don't have one. I wasn't aware of that.
All right, it's something we might want to draft, yeah, to be sure.
Keep this from happening again.
My understanding, we have flown this flag before. I remember seeing it.
It's been done without official lawyer saying you can. We may just be did it.
It's on half of the post offices in the state, right? Or maybe more so than the country, right? You know, so I don't have any problem with.
I don't have any problem with it.
Likewise.
Do we need a motion or?
Yeah, that's what I was,
It looks advisory in nature, so.
yeah, I mean, after I talked to the attorney, got the opinion, I followed up with, do we need to make a motion? How do we put this into play? And he hadn't gotten back to me. The next date that they would like to fly it is the 3rd Friday in September.
Oh,
So I can find out if there's no motion needed, well, then we'll fly it. And if there is a motion needed, then we'll come back to that before September.
You know, another issue that Linda had was, you know, how many flags can you get on?
Well,
That's the flag on the wall here.
You can find it at the facade as you walk into the building, and then it's right next to the post office and pretty clear that
And
it's
it's
the
just
post office.
for specific days.
6 specific days. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, our next item, I bet this one can be quick. This is a consideration of approving a liquor license for Stone Corral to allow outside consumption.
Jay, this is David. I move to approve the outside consumption permit for Stone Corral Brewery LLC.
I'll second, but I have a question.
Okay, I'll state the motion. We have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by, I'm sorry, who seconded? Jeff.
No, Lisa.
Lisa, seconded by Lisa Miller, to approve the outside consumption permit for Stone Corral Brewery LLC. Lisa, ask your question.
Do they not have one already? There's a lot of consumption.
year. Yeah, they gotta renew it.
It's a yearly thing.
Okay, okay.
And one of the things about this is,
Yes.
well, the licenses for a single place of business
Yeah.
don't necessarally all come and do it at the same time.
Yeah.
Because we authorize their,
Yeah.
yeah, but they don't know.
I guess renewal rather than approving.
Right.
is what I was looking for. So.
Yeah.
I wish they would be open after our select board meeting. That's all.
After the day I had yesterday, I've been looking for it all week, and then I'm like, I have no beer in the house. Oh my God.
I was all upset because when I went down to Man the Machine to watch the fireworks last night, Stone Corral was just closing. But they snuck me a can of cold beer. So
Right. Okay. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
And J.I. Our next item has to do with a potential 6-month certificate of deposit. In February, the select board moved to recommend to the treasurer to purchase a 6-month certificate in the amount of $500,000 in March of 2023. We also moved to recommend the purchase of 6-month CDs in the amount of $500,000 in May and July, subject to a review by the select board prior to each purchase. Following are the interest rates as they stood on Wednesday, June 28th. 3 months, 4.4%, 6 months, 4.6%, 9 months, 4.5%. So 6 months is actually the best rate.
Which is interesting. I wonder how they came with that.
They're expecting great.
I agree.
5.5, I don't know where you figure so low.
Oh, wow.
Especially for half
For 500,000?
I know 5.5.
Who are you with?
That Citizens Bank, it ended on June 30th, but if you call, you might be able to get it.
500,000.
That's a significant difference. That's better.
Jay, this is David. I move to
months ago.
recommend the town treasurer move
you guys just
$500,000 of town funds into a 6-month certificate of deposit in July 2023 with an APR of 4.6%.
I'll second.
Anyway, motion David Sanders, seconded by Lisa Miller, to move to recommend that town treasurer move $500,000 of town funds into a 6-month certificate of deposit in July 2023 with an APR of 4.6%.
How about at least?
At least 4.6%. Do you accept the?
That's TD.
That's TD.
Okay, so we modified that to at least 4.6%.
I agree.
So I
Duncan,
changed my motion to $500,000.
So at least, so if the rate, so actually, if the rate has gone down in the last week, you want it to come back for reconsideration?
That's, so you were setting a specific rate, so.
I was, but
Because the
I'll
rate
amend it to a 6.
might fluctuate a little
6
bit
months
from last week to when we.
So I'll amend my.
Okay, we'll take out the
6
specific
months.
rate.
Okay, so 6-month CD.
and that's okay.
But I'm still gonna leave it at half.
Yeah.
You have to stay with this, do you have to stay with this bank that you're specifying, or if you do one last call around to see what the banking and the highest rate is, can you change banks? It's just a CD, it's not long.
We could suggest that the finance director finds a better rate. We would appreciate that.
Right.
That's true. She's pretty.
Okay, so anyway, state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
And J.I. Okay, we already took care of the access permit for 3 Boys Road. We will now move into consideration of transferring funds for structural analysis of the town center roof to use for a structural analysis of the post office roof. Jeff, go ahead.
Okay, so the last time we talked about this, we had a proposal from Engineering Ventures to look at both this roof and the post office roof to put solar on it. Okay, we had an engineer come take a look at this roof. And what we decided to do is to look at just this roof first, and we only approved enough money to look at this roof. What we learned is when they looked up there, they looked around, they say no signs of stress whatsoever. The roof looks good. Solar panels on this pitch roof are very light. It's looks good.
It's a pretty new roof too.
It's a pretty new roof, so this looks good as far as structurally. What we don't know is and we know that we cannot fit enough solar panels on this roof to take care of the consumption of this. So what the committee wants to do is wants to look at how can we maximize solar on this building. It's much easier to do it on a building than in the parking lot. Parking lot's a whole different thing. But it's like, how much can we get on this building? And the next place to look is the post office roof. So instead of spending the money on doing an engineering analysis of this roof, we want to go to the second option and spend less money and just look at the post office roof.
That's a flat.
Yes, they have to be. It's a different kind of analysis.
Yeah.
So that's a flat roof and which means it needs to be ballasted, which means it needs to hold cinder blocks essentially, you know, in some fashion or be fastened to the rafters in some fashion. That's going to take, but they gave us a price for doing that and it's less than what we already approved.
I have a dumb question that has nothing to do with the roof. It's just that the post office roof is going to be blocked by this portion of the building for substantial periods of the day. Do we realistically expect to make much juice over there?
That can be analyzed. So, you know, what we can find out, and we actually asked the mechanical engineers to do this is how many KW, you know, how large an array could we put on both of these roofs and what it would produce. I have a solar array on the Heinsberg Police Station, ironically enough. And I have it on, I think it's 2 different faces, both south and west. And the west doesn't produce as much as the south, but together they produce enough for a return.
Yeah, if the numbers work, by all means, but
South is pretty much there.
yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a southwest, so it will get some. It'll get some.
Kara?
Question, Jeff, and this is all the committee thing that you might be working on, but the post office is 1 floor. Is that foundation anything that would be able to have a second floor on, and then the solar panels would be part of that second floor? So you wouldn't really have to evaluate this roof. If you're evaluating the structure itself, then you can build the roof that would take that.
So what the committee has looked at is many different iterations of different types of buildings and additions to do on this building. And what we've landed on is that we can fit all of the current services that we have now within this footprint as it stands now. Adding another floor to that would add millions to the project, and we were afraid of adding too much to the cost of this project for a bond vote.
Okay.
So if we can fit within this building, it would be our least cost option.
And the thing we've talked about on the nuclear reactor.
Yeah. What's that?
The nuclear reactor.
There is grant money available from DOE on nuclear reactors this year, but
They're really small. They're
Yeah.
about the size.
Oh, I know.
no problem.
My father
I have no problem.
I grew up-
putting that-
This might explain something that I grew up around a nuclear reactor. My father was, Virginia Tech had a research reactor. Dad was head of the physics department. So I remember well staring down into the blue.
I thought you glowed a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm, as a son of a nuclear engineer, I'm always like, Europe has done such amazing things with micronuclear. I kind of wish we weren't so paranoid about it.
What could happen?
What could happen? Well, that's the thing is Three Mile Island ignored safety protocols. They ignored every bit of engineering logic. It was just.
What I'm looking forward to is,
There was no uniformity of design of control.
Yeah.
what I'm looking forward to is completing the project on the town center in my lifetime. Putting a nuclear reactor would add another 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
You'll just have to
I
live
think I
longer.
got that in me.
Okay, so because we're not gonna do second story just because of your age. Is that what you're saying? Jeff?
So, Jay, this is.
I'm older than I was.
I'd like to move to authorize use of $6,000 from the town center fund to pay for a structural analysis of the post office roof. The $6,000 payment from the town center fund will be in place of the $7,500, which was allocated at the June 5th, 2023 meeting for a structural analysis for the town center roof, as that project is no longer necessary.
Jay, this is David. I'm second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Bart Hill, seconded by David Sanders, to authorize using $6,000 from the town center fund to pay for a structural analysis of the post office roof, using $6,000 out of the $7,500 that was allocated at June 5th, because that project is no longer necessary. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I. David, I.
Bart, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, we are on the home stretch. Our next item is a carryover from the water and sewer meeting. The state is mandating that all water systems conduct an inventory of their water service lines for very good reasons. Some towns have asbestos pipes, some have iron, some have brick. We fortunately are in pretty good shape, but still, we need to do the inventory. And the state has a drinking water state revolving fund that is going to give us a loan, 100% forgiven loan. So it's basically free money, but we have to accept it as a loan. And this will go to fund something the state's mandating that we do anyway.
And just to add on to that, this includes the private portion of the survey fund, which historically the town has never had any role or responsibility for. That's a crucial piece of this, and would help to explain why they're offering 100% funding.
Probably where a lot of leaks occur.
And antiquated lines.
Yeah, the lines from somebody's house to the curb stop. There's all sorts of weird stuff out there.
So if we're doing the inventory, do we have any liability for fixing anything we find?
It's prudent if we do find stuff. I mean, the homeowner is responsible for paying for repair of their own line. But here's the thing, if we're digging down to repair our lines and fix things, and the homeowner needs to be repaired, it's like, we got the digging equipment there, you know, so it makes sense to do this all as part of one project.
Like on Covenant.
And this is coming before the select board because the Water and Sewer Commission does not have the authority to.
Oh, okay. I was wondering that too. Thank you.
Yep.
But this will not affect taxpayers. It's just the select board's authority to borrow.
Okay,
Ready for the motion?
yeah.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the loan agreement with the Vermont State Revolving Fund, the amount of $43,300 for the water service line inventory, noting that this loan will be 100% subsidized and no payments will be made from the town.
Is Bart, I will second that.
And we have motion from Lisa Miller, seconded by Bart Hill, to move to approve the loan agreement with the Vermont State Revolving Fund in the amount of $43,300 for the water line service inventory, noting that this loan will be 100% subsidized and no payments will be made from the town. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, aye.
Bart, aye.
And J.I. Okay. Our last item on the warrant agenda, other than minutes, warrants, purchase orders on a possible probable executive session, has to do with the format of our town meeting minutes and of our minutes in general. Duncan Wardwell, hey Duncan, spends conservatively 4+ hours creating the minutes from just one of our meetings. I mean, he has a recording to listen to. He's not sitting there right now writing like crazy, but to try to go through and capture and turn it into a sentence by sentence, who said what,
Especially get the names and things.
right, to get the names and to try to think, okay, Jay just said, I agree. Do I have to write that down? You know, it can really go in a red soul. The state mandatory requirement for minutes is who is present and the motions and the votes. So we are not going to be treading in deep water by doing this. We're basically just saving Duncan a few gray hairs. Now, we had a question earlier tonight at the water and sewer meeting about whether the recordings that MMC TV maintains can be legally considered part of the meeting record or not. That seemed to be germane at the time. Now, there is in your packet, you sent this out today, right? Monday morning, an example of what the modified minutes would look like.
Exactly.
And
It was excellent.
yeah, if you want to, so people watching the recording later can kind of see what we're talking about, if you want to pop one up.
Give me a second.
Yeah, and can you hear me all?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think it's an opportunity. It's there's no right or wrong answer, but it's an opportunity to look at places to do things where we could do it differently. Though a couple of things is the video will be probably online for a few years. You know, it won't be there forever. But still, I think as long as we approve the summary, the paragraph would be the thing we could focus on. Yes, that part right there that Josh is highlighting. If we could focus on almost collectively writing that of what do we want to do to get that to, because even from the video, it is unbiased. It's like you try to like Jay said, you don't want to do this, that, other things. Bard's analogies are great, but they don't always translate. You know, it's always a good assignment to like just find out what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep. So I just want to provide that as an opportunity. And likewise, I think the motions, the POs, the financial motions are more important to keep track of. And we could just more focus on that paragraph summary at minutes, because yeah, it's I don't mean to leave out anyone's stuff, but sometimes I do.
Jeff?
So I like this idea for two reasons. One, I don't, you know, Duncan, your minutes have been really comprehensive and very thorough, and I have appreciated them. But they take you a long time to produce, and they take me a long time to read. You know, which is that
exactly.
Counts.
You know, yeah.
So like, I like this idea of this, the summary, focusing on the summary, and perhaps something we should do is focus more on what that summary is and make sure we understand that it's hard to read through 9 to 15 pages of minutes on for each meeting. You know, that's, you know,
I agree, and I want to provide the timestamps to the videos where we can at least watch it within the months that we need to watch it. Where if we have any disagreements about stuff, we can all watch the videos at 2 times speed, and then we can agree or disagree on what was there and change that. But yeah, it's a tough one. It's just how we want to spend our time. It's not awful to do because I use the transcript mostly these days to just find what you each said. You each said many great things, but it's condensing it down to what you said.
Yeah, you're gonna miss some of my great comments, so I don't know.
Well, no, everyone's no. It's yeah. It's like, once again, I try not to judge too quickly because it's been a year and plus. But yeah, no, everyone's got great things, but it's so tough to condense it. So it's and likewise too, to read it's tough. Reading it is tough. I do not want to read anything 20 pages long.
Okay, so we don't need a motion to do this. We just say it's a good idea.
If he's
no, we can, yeah.
And good, you know, color or something, I think you should put it in.
Right.
And he can leave it out. You got editorial license in him.
Okay, Kara?
I really do like this idea. I just am the one who said in the water and sewer meeting that if the video could be legally part of the meeting minutes, because sometimes you might remember it one way, or you might not remember a conversation that happened that built up to that, and it is the public record. So if you want to go see what happened 10 years ago, you go to the meeting minutes and you're reading the meeting minutes. And if all you see is this paragraph, this little brief summary of a 2-hour meeting that had a motion, you don't really understand all the thought that went into that decision. And so
and I think, yeah.
If they
I think we have the time to do that, right? I think but we're going above and beyond the statute where that's never been done in the past, and it's like that's a difficult standard to follow, and it's a difficult thing for me to find that too. I'm being biased, and suppose I'm not there. That's a difficult standard to set for anyone, so I just want to put it out there.
Least biased minute taker that I have seen in my history of this town. So do not take it back. Okay.
No, I totally get that, but yeah, it's not a good sustainable system either, so that's not good. So no, and it's the transcript's available. We can publish the transcript, but that's not easy to read because it's just timestamps and not people. So we can all save that stuff and we can publish that if we ever want to. So that's easy to do too.
Duncan?
It's like a body cam.
You know, I had a really interesting talk with Officer, I'm terrible with names, Officer Nick.
Yes.
Of the Hinesburg Police Department. Okay. He was talking about how his body cam works. Some of you may know this, but it's passively recording all the time. But it doesn't all get saved. But if he is in a situation where it needs to get saved, he just taps it and immediately backs up 30 seconds and begins actively recording. So if he missed the start of a fight or an argument, tap, and he's got that part. That's the model they chose. So I just found that interesting.
Cool. I was wondering how they know, hang on, don't hit me.
Some departments, they record everything.
Mhm.
And it probably costs a lot more because it's a ton of storage space.
Same with Duncan in the minutes.
Okay, moving on to minutes, warrants and purchase orders. I would like, everybody should have gotten today in their email. The warrants relating to July 4th. And I don't know if you had a chance to look them over.
I moved to find. You wanna
There's a correction that needs to be made.
Okay.
And Connie Bona, I would just want to thank, she's not on the call, but she pulled this together all today. She said, if you get all the expenses in by 8 o'clock in the morning, we'll get them out today. And our contest winners, this is paying for contest winners for the float we had.
So this is a purchase order, right?
No, this is the warrant.
So
I think we're at executive session.
No, that doesn't last.
Okay.
We're doing warrants, minutes and purchase order.
Okay.
And this one is the one that I just want to explain. It was sent out today. If you look at it, there are prizes for walking floats, regular floats, and horses. And there's prizes for the people who competed in the karaoke contest. There's reimbursement for our 4 sets of musicians and for the stage and for the chicken that was cooked in the barbecue. Now, the mistake is the 4th one down. You can tell Connie was kind of copying and pasting there because 3rd from the bottom, we have the rustics with the correct person, Thomas Bisson, but then she has the rustics up here. No, it was a mistake. And furthermore, the baritones wanted cash on the barrelhead. And so I paid them I wrote them a personal check yesterday. So that $300 should actually go to me.
So should we strike the baritones rustics one? No, wait, you said the rustics one or the
rustics one at the bottom is completely.
That was fine.
It's only the one down. She's got the description
Okay.
for the wrong band. That should actually say baritones because that's what it's for.
But they've already been paid.
They've already been paid, so the payee would be me.
So maybe let's strike that. Let's add you. I mean, if you guys strike that and add Jay as the payee. I think that, I don't know if she needs more documentation.
I actually sent her, I have a copy of the check if she wants to see it. She didn't ask for it, but I got it. I also sent her W-9s for all the bands, so, a question no one's asked, but you might be thinking it, where's that money coming from? The town paid for the fireworks some months ago using what little was left in the committees, in the former groups bank account and supplemented with enough to pay for the fireworks. Everything you see there is being paid for by donations.
Oh, okay.
We have $7,100 in the fund and a little bit more is still trickling in. So we do have money to cover all that.
Okay. So if you're not gonna do that, I'll just cross out the rustics and write.
Pay for this.
I said at the time, this is let's see how this works. Just is karaoke really something people want? And so I said, if we don't raise enough money to cover this, I will pay for the stage myself. And it looks, because I mean, no one told me to. I did this completely on my own. I don't want to cause the town debt because I had a stupid ass idea. But fortunately, it worked out. People were demanding karaoke come back annually. People were.
We talked to the Andrews Community Forest over and over again. You have to come to us before.
Well, you can't go wrong with karaoke.
That's true.
Is there a show around it?
Jay, thank you. Jay, thank you for all your hard work on.
Yeah, you really did.
Everybody else.
Well, the rest of the committee too. I mean, the committee meetings were long and involved and it all came together. The only thing we couldn't control was the freak rainstorm that came through and sent everybody home.
Yeah, right.
It didn't rain at my house. It didn't rain in my house. It's a mile and a half.
Yeah, we got this sudden downpour that lasted really hard for about 10 minutes and everybody just about left.
Mhm.
But then they came back for the karaoke.
Where you got those
Good
golf
thing, yeah.
carts from?
Well, it's a good thing it
So we're gonna
rained
make that
before the
change.
karaoke, Jay.
Mhm.
So is a change of that pay. I think Josh is looking for approval.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, so we need a motion to accept. We actually have 2023 warrant, 2024 warrant, and this warrant, right?
Correct. So if you just accept the warrants, you'll get them all.
I'll second.
Except as the warrants as amended.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the warrants.
David made it. I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion from David Sander, seconded by Lisa Miller to approve the warrants, the 2023, 2024, and July 4th warrants as presented.
So,
Jeff.
so I had one question about one of the invoices. Is this the right time to ask it?
Sure.
Okay, so.
Which one?
Packet, sorry.
Do I have it up here? I got it somewhere, don't I?
We have two
It's on
packets of invoices.
20. It's, it's on page 76 of 92.
So that's probably
So it's a
23.
longer one, right?
Yeah.
And it's on the Vermont Investigative and Consulting Services.
Right.
I'm assuming that that's background check.
Right.
Yeah, so
One of our police chief candidates, but not our original police chief candidate.
correct. It was the second police chief candidate, and I started to have an investigator do some work on that to try to get ahead of it with this candidate, but then ultimately the candidate did not really agree to the full and complete background check, so we stopped.
Well, so I'm glad you did this, and it's something I think that we need to think about as far as process going forward is, what level of background checks do we do and when we do it in the process?
I was frankly surprised that the gentleman, given his experience, was not willing to have a complete background check. You don't want necessarily your current employers to know that you're looking, but it's illegal to fire somebody because they're looking for another job. Especially if you work in government, you just can't.
It's not just legal though, it's comfort. I would think it's difficult working condition where you go, I don't want to work for you anymore,
Well,
And I think those appointed executive positions, they are exempt. So they're kind of at will, like.
okay, that's a good point.
Like commissioners, secretaries, that kind of stuff, like, yeah, this ain't working out for me.
But it is, who are these people? The Vermont Investigative and Consulting? Is this like a private detective or?
Should probably be extra hang it down by the door.
He's actually a former state trooper, and he was recommended by Trevor Whipple, and actually June Heston also recommended him. So I asked Trevor for a list of investigators because the one we had been using, he's no longer in the business. So I got a few references and moved forward with Thomas. And yeah, he did a bit, but then as things fell apart, we stopped.
Josh knows a guy.
Well, I know a guy that knows a guy.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second, correct? Okay. Oh, I forget who made them. I guess please state your name and your vote to accept all the warrants as amended.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, Art, I.
And J, I. Now we have 5 purchase orders, right?
1, 2, 3, yes, actually 6.
6.
Yeah, there was the 6th one that was sort of not in the same grouping, but it was still there.
Okay,
So. You want me to go through them or you want
Please.
to? Okay, so the first one is purchase order 4642 to the Heinsberg Police Department. This is for police coverage in June.
14.
The amount is $14,025.
So I move to approve purchase order number 4642 in the amount of $14,025 for police coverage.
I'll second.
okay, we have a motion from Jeff Ford and a second from Lisa Miller to approve purchase order 4642 in the amount of $14,025 for police coverage. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, Art, I.
And J, I. Next, purchase order 4622.
So this is for various vendors for gravel and aggregate for the budget for FY24 to allow the road foreman to. What he usually does is selects the best price that he can find on the item that he needs in season and then will not exceed the $130,000 budget.
Right, so we're going to see throughout the year periodically purchases against this purchase order. This is just setting his ability to go out and make those purchases in advance.
So he's just stockpiling whatever he buys.
Yeah,
Right.
and then sometimes he needs things on a short turnaround for a project and this allows him to kind of act quickly and find the best prices.
Get a better rate in the bulk.
Yeah, he usually does a good job of calling around to figure out who can deliver it quickly, the best price, the trucking, so gives him flexibility.
Okay, so $130,000 for all that aggregate and rock and stuff. Do we have a motion?
I'll move that we approve purchase order 4622 to various vendors for highway materials in the amount of $130,000.
Okay,
This is David, I'll second.
motion from Lisa Miller, seconded by David Sander to approve purchase order 4622 in the amount of $130,000 for various rock, sand, gravel, and other aggregates. Okay, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Art, I.
And J, I. Our next purchase order is 4623. This is for sand. Lots and lots of sand. From Heinsberg Sand and Gravel, amount of $39,900 and
$6.25.
is that 996 or 906?
Looks like 996.
39,996.25.
So it's,
Okay.
so
But in
the total is 40,000.
Okay, so
He rounded up by $4. So
You're
I think he can go 40 grand and he'll spend $3.75 less than that.
So it should be for 40,000.
Sure. I didn't catch that till just now. So 40,000 will cover us.
Okay.
That's probably the budget. That is the budget.
Okay, I want to see that $4. So I move to approve purchase order number 4623 of the Heinsberg Sand and Gravel in an amount not to exceed $40,000.
A second.
A motion from Jeff Ford, second from Lisa Miller to approve purchase order 4623 and an amount not to exceed $40,000 for sand. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, I.
And J.I. Okay. Our next one is for, is that chloride?
Yep.
Dirt and dust control.
For dirt and dust, chloride does that? I did not know that.
Yeah, volumes on those.
Keeps
sand.
it from getting dusty when you have those dry
Okay,
days.
so purchase order 4624 is the total amount. Did he round up to 15,000?
Let's find out. And
He did. Okay.
Connie.
First order. Who's the, what's the number then?
What's their
4624 for $15,000 of chloride.
So moved.
Okay, do you have a second?
Is Bard, I will second that.
Motion from David Sanders, seconded by Bart Hill to purchase order 4624 for $15,000 worth of chloride. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, I.
And J.I. And one more, right? Purchase order 4639 for IT services of various kinds. From Simple Route, who's our IT vendor. We're doing some, you'll notice it's actually broken out by department here. Yeah, rotate, okay.
so this is going to affect primarily admin, but there's also some little bit of library and water and wastewater. Really, it's changing over. Right now, all of our email is Google based, and this will change us over to Microsoft 365 and allow us to make some other security upgrades that are really better compatible with Microsoft 365. So I broke it out here between the admin, the water, the wastewater. Some of it's hardware costs, some of it is service costs. So provided a key here for finance to divvy it up. Essentially, let me get back to. So the total for admin is $7,600.30. So if I could approve that, but I just wanted both the Water and Sewer Commission as well as the Select Board to see the total amount. Since it is over $10,000, so that you guys could all.
Then we need to move the total or just the 7630.
The total amount, I think you guys move the total amount with all the information there and sign it, and we should be covered.
Okay, so purchase order 4639 for IT services and upgrades, and an amount not to exceed $11,741.57.
Is Bard so moved?
A second.
Okay. Motion from Bart Hill, second from Lisa Miller to approve purchase order 4639 for IT services from Simple Route in amount not to exceed $11,741.57. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, I.
And J.I. We also need a motion to approve the minutes from our previous
This
meeting.
is one last.
Oh, you got one
So,
more? Good Lord.
And also for Simple, and this is for FY24, our standard IT services. It also gets split between water and sewer and general admin. So I put the monthly bills here. So for admin, it's about $1,320 per month. So that does total over more than $10,000 for just admin. So the total amount is $22,440 for the IT services that we contract for each year.
Okay, questions? Okay, so we've purchased order 4646 to Simple Group in an amount not to exceed $22,440 for fiscal year. Oh, I looked like an 8 for a second.
No,
I'm like,
probably.
please tell me we're not that late.
Those look like an 8. It's FY, yeah.
Does look like an 8.
I probably would up here 24. I think I was getting late that day too, perhaps. So,
Okay, so for fiscal year 24, $22,440.
Is Bard move to approve?
I'll
This is
second.
David Ellsworth.
Okay, we have a motion by Hill, seconded by David Sander and Lisa Miller. For purchase order. 4646, not to exceed $22,440. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
And Jay, I. We need a motion to approve the minutes of June 20th.
This is David, so moved.
And I'll second that.
And we have a motion from David Center, second from Lisa Miller to approve the minutes of June 20th. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
And Jay, I. Now, for the moment you've all been waiting for.
Da-da-da.
At the end of our agenda, we do have what I suspect will be a quick personnel issue. There are motions in your packets.
Jay, this is David. I move to find that premature general public knowledge about a personnel issue would clearly place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
This is Bart, I'll second.
Motion from David Sanders, seconded by Bart Hill, to move to find that premature general public knowledge about a personnel issue would clearly place the town at a substantial disadvantage. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bart, I.
And Jay, I.
Jay, this is David. I move to enter into executive session to discuss a personnel issue under the provisions of 1 BSA 313A3 of the Vermont State Statutes and to invite town manager Josh Arneson into the executive session.
This is Bart, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from David Center, seconded by Bart Hill to move to executive session and invite town manager Josh Arneson to join us in there. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bart, I.
And Jay, I. Okay, we're going to move into executive session. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, motion from, let's give it to Lisa and seconded by Bard to adjourn. All in favor, please state your name and your vote, et cetera.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I think we're adjourned.